Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had a hero for a mother part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝐵𝐵122311 from Wattpad. So, let's start the video. Just stay the hell away from me. Stop calling, I don't want anything to do with you. You yelled into the phone while walking to your new apartment building. You hung your phone up and shoved it in your bag. When entering the building, you saw a short woman with green hair carrying a couple of bags towards the stairs. It looked like she was having a hard time lugging so much by herself. Hey, would you like some help carrying those? You asked while catching one of the slipping bags from her arms. Oh, yes dear. That would be lovely. She replied with a warm smile. You quietly followed behind the woman up to the 4th floor, which coincidentally was the same floor your apartment was on. When she came to a stop, you realized her apartment directly across the hall yours. Would you like to stay for some tea? It's the least I could do for you, she said while setting the bags down on her kitchen counter. I just moved in yesterday, I live across the hall. It really wasn't out of the way or anything. You smiled at her. In that case, I insist you stay. We are neighbors after all. She beamed with joy at the news. What's the harm in staying for a little bit? It's not like I have to keep to myself anymore, although, if he comes for me it will hurt more when I have to leave. After a few minutes of contemplating whether or not it was okay to let her get to know me a little, I answered. Well, I guess I could stay for a little while. My name is Y/N, L/N. You bowed slightly to her. Nice to meet you, Y/N. My name is Inko Midoriya, but you can just call me Inko. She gave another warm smile. Anyone could tell she was kind by nature. She seemed like someone comfortable to be around, and that's a feeling that was rather foreign to you. The two of you sat together at her kitchen table for a while, just talking about how you were adjusting to moving to a new place. What do you do for work, sweetheart? She asked while taking a sip from her cup. I work as a bartender, actually. I just started the job a few weeks ago, but so far I like it. The pay is pretty good, and it's not too difficult either. You shrugged. So, do you have any family here? Y/N.
No.
I live alone. Both of my parents are dead. You said, looking down into the steaming cup.
Oh.
How old were you when they passed away? Inko asked with a sad look in her eyes. I was 16. I lived in a few foster homes until I turned 18, then I moved in with a friend for a while before I got my own place. That's HRD on a child. I'm sorry you had to grow up so quicky, dear. She placed her hand over yours on the table. It's totally fine. Everyone has their fair share of troubles in life, so I try not to dwell on mine. It could have been better, but it also could have been a lot worse. You smiled to her and put on a brave face, but really you were close to breaking down. I have a son about your age, and when his father left I thought he would never get over it. We had each other though, so eventually we both started to move on. She paused for a moment before continuing. I wish you didn't have to go through that alone. I couldn't imagine how hard that was on you. Tears starting to well in her eyes. You have a son. What does he do? You asked, trying to change the subject. He's a pro hero. He worried me to death getting there though, to be honest he still does. She said, giving a small smile. He's lucky to have a mom that loves him so much. You gave her a heartwarming smile. Maybe I can introduce the two of you sometime. He visits me when he doesn't have to work, she says in an endearing tone. You could tell how close they were by the fondness in her voice as she spoke of him. Well, you know where to find me the next time he comes to see you. You matched her tone. But I'd better get back home. I have a shift at the bar to work in a few hours and a ton of boxes to unpack. All right, dear. You can come back for tea anytime. I'm always here and would love the company, she said as she stood, beginning to clean up the table where we sat. Thank you, Inko, waving to her as you headed for the door. I'll come back over to see you tomorrow. Upon entering your apartment, you turned on the TV in the living room and began to unpack a few boxes that sat near the kitchen door. A few hours later, you decided to stop for the night. You walked to the bathroom to shower. Turning on the hot water, allowing the steam to fill the room, You stared at yourself in the mirror for a few minutes. Small scars littered your skin. I hope this works out. I'm finally starting to get my life back. I can't go back to how things used to be. When your shower was finished, you threw on a pair of jeans and a F/C t-shirt and started on your way to work. Arriving at the bar with about 10 minutes to spare, you took a moment to put on a fake smile to get through the shift. You weren't really used to being around so many people at once just yet. The bar was called Pub Soma, and it was only a few miles away from downtown Mizutofu. Hey May. I'm here, so you can go home now if you want, you said while making your way to the blonde woman behind the counter. Okay, I'll head out as soon as I get these glasses put away for you. She smiled at you while drawing a whiskey glass. How's the move going, girl? It's been alright, I still have a lot to do, but I'm getting there. I also met one of my neighbors earlier today. She is really sweet and she invited me in for tea. You replied, smiling slightly. Oh yeah? She an eyebrow at you. What did the two of you talk about? She said that her son is a pro hero and she wanted to introduce us sometime. You rubbed the back of your neck shyly. I don't know why, but it kind of makes me nervous. I don't usually make the best first impressions. What if he's cute? You two might hit it off. She whipped her head in your direction in excitement. I don't know, I'm not really looking for a relationship anyways. My judgment when it comes to men. You sighed. May shrugged her shoulders, and the two of you went back to work for the night. Time skip for 1 month, please. Stop. You screamed, waking up in a cold sweat while clutching your chest. Your heart sounded like a drum. Another nightmare, that he found me. You had been having them a lot lately, so getting to sleeping was hard sometimes. You were always cautious when leaving the apartment, careful not to draw any attention to yourself. You didn't want him to find you again. All you wanted was to finally be free of that cruel man. But every time you managed to slip away from him, he would find you within a couple of weeks. This time was a little different though. You had moved to a new city and got a new job. This is the longest you'd been away from him in 2 years. Still, you was a bit nervous, but the overall paranoia was starting to fade a little more each day. While dragging yourself out of bed, you decided that you would go see your friend across the hall after taking a trip into town since it was still early. You made some breakfast, took a quick shower, and got dressed in a casual outfit. When you finished running errands, you walked to your last stop before heading home. The smell of freshly baked pastries lingered around in the air. After grabbing what you ordered, you headed home with a bright smile. A smile that was almost extinct. In the month of visiting Inko almost every day, you two started to get pretty close. You still couldn't bring yourself to tell her the real reason why you moved here, or about your psycho ex-boyfriend/stalker just yet. She became more of a mother than anything, but you still haven't had the chance to meet her son because he didn't get to stay long during his visits. He had been pretty busy with some mission he was working on, which was unfortunate, but you decided not to worry about that. You walked over to Inko's a little earlier than usual today because you wanted to treat her to a box of blooming tea and some desserts to try because she has been so kind. Your knuckles tapped the door lightly, and Inko answered with her usual smile plastered on her face. For some reason, that smile seems a little brighter today. Oh, hello, Y/N. I didn't think you would be over until later today, but I'm so happy that you're here. She stepped back, opening the door wider for you to enter. Please come in. Walking in and taking your usual seat at the table, you kept the gifts you had brought for Inko in your bag. I don't have to work this weekend, so I thought I would come to spend some time with you, Inko. I'm glad you came when you did. She held her hands to her chest. Here you go. I wanted to say thank you for always being so welcoming to me. You smiled at her while pulling the gifts from your bag. Oh dear, you didn't have to do that. I always enjoy your company. She placed her hands on her cheeks, giving a grateful smile. Thank you. I've been wanting to try these cakes from the new bakery in town since it opened. I know. That's why I stopped in there this morning before they got busy. I remembered you mentioned something about it last week when I was here. You gave her a genuine smile. I'll go put some tea on for us, sweetheart. Inko turned to the stove and started preparing the tea while you got the cups down from the cabinet and set out the cakes. Hey Mom, do you think you can sew my suit for me? It's the 3rd time this month that I've messed up my costume, you heard a man's voice coming from the living room. As you looked over towards the unknown voice, you saw a rather handsome man with scars covering his arms and chest. He still never looked up from his hero costume in his hands to notice that anyone else was there. This must be Inko's son that she always talks about. While looking him up and down, you soon realized he was only wearing a towel that wrapped around his waist tightly. He must have just got out of the shower because his hair was dripping water down his chest and back. He was a little taller and was very well built. As soon as he looked up, you made eye contact, and you both instantly blushed. "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that anyone else was here," he said shyly, running his hand through his black and green hair. It's fine," you said, flustered while looking away from him and then back to meet his gaze. For a moment, you just looked at each other. Admiring his appealing green eyes and freckles that covered his face, it seemed that you both forgot where we were. "Izuku, honey clothes?" Inko noted, breaking the silence. Both of us snapped back to reality and looked away from each other.
"Right.
I'll be back." He ran off into a room down the hall to get dressed. "Sorry about that, dear. I was so excited that you brought me these cakes that I completely forgot to mention he was here." She looked away from you with a sheepish smile. "Don't worry about it," a blush still dusting your cheeks. A few minutes later, he walked back into the kitchen fully dressed in a pair of jeans and a green t-shirt. "I'm Izuku Midoriya, and you must be L/N, right?" You shake hands. "My mom talks about you a lot." "Yeah, I'm Y/N, L/N. It's nice to finally meet you. She talks about you quite a bit too," you said while giving a small nervous smile. "I'm so happy that you finally got to meet. I just know you two will be great friends," Inko said while pouring some tea into 3 cups.
"Me too.
I've been super busy at work, but I'm finally catching a break. I'm glad we got to meet." He smiled at you brightly. "Same here." You looked away from him with a tiny smile. His smile was warm and kind like his mother's. "Inko handled our drinks to the two of us before we all sat down at the table together." Inko sat next to you, while Izuku sat on the other side of the table directly in front of you. "Why am I so nervous all of a sudden? Inko talks about him so much that I feel like I've known him for years." You couldn't help but notice that Izuku kept glancing in your direction, then looking away as soon as your eyes met with his. So, do you like living in Mizurufu?" he asked, looking a little anxious. "Yeah, I love it here. It's a lot quieter than Tokyo." You smiled at him. "What made you decide to move so far from Tokyo?" "It's about a 3-hour trip, right?" he asked, propping his head up with his hand.
"Well."
You paused. "It was for personal reasons," you said, looking to your hands that rested in your lap.
"Oh."
"I understand. I didn't mean to be so pushy," he said with a defeated look. "Not at all, I just don't really want to talk about it." You gave a reassuring smile. "But Inko tells me that you're quite the hero," you said, changing the subject. His face turned pink. "I am a pro hero, but I've still got a lot to learn." He rubbed the back of his neck with an awkward smile. It's so cute that he's quick to blush over something so simple. "Wait, why am I thinking he's cute? I just met him." "Oh, Izuku, you've worked so hard to get to where you are. You should be proud. Not everyone has what it takes to be the #1 hero." Inko looked at him with a small smile. "You're the #1 hero. That's so cool." You beamed. "Deku, right? Thank you. And yes, that's me." He stuttered a bit from embarrassment. "What do you do for work?" "I'm a bartender." "It's not as impressive as being a hero, but I think people need me as much as they need you." All 3 of us shared a laugh. "Do you mind if I ask what your quirk is?" He relaxed a little. "Oh, I actually don't have one." You gave a sad smile while looking down into your tea. "Both of my parents were quirkless, so it wasn't a big surprise that I never got one." "Sorry, I shouldn't be asking such personal questions," Midoriya said, looking down at his hands.
"No, it's fine.
I got over it after I graduated. Growing up, I always wanted to be a hero, though. I just learned to adjust to reality over the years." You looked up from the cup and gave him a small smile. "You know, dear, for the longest time, I didn't think my son had a quirk either. The doctors told us that he would likely never develop one, so it was quite shocked when he got one in middle school and got into the hero course at UA." Inko said, looking over to her son. "So he didn't have one growing up either, huh?" How strange. He was so determined to be a hero. He would always write down everything he could about every hero he saw. She gave a little giggle. Mom. That's a little embarrassing. Izuku waved his hands frantically in front of him. I'm sure she doesn't want to hear about how much of a dork I was. I don't think it's dorky at all. UA is a great school. I've only ever heard good things about it. Your mom is right, Midoriya. You should be proud of yourself. You gave a bright smile. After everyone finished having tea and talking for a little while, you got up from the chair and started helping the two of them clean the kitchen up. Just as you went to place your teacup into the sink, Izuku did the same. Your hands touched only for a second, but it felt like electricity running through your body. Even though you expected him to apologize, he didn't say a word. The two of you just made eye contact for a moment, and he smiled so brightly at you that you thought you would explode. Inko, on the other hand, was standing behind you watching how things were unfolding. She smirked a little seeing you smile at each other, but said nothing to push the situation. You two would be so cute together, Inko said in a whisper. Did you say something, Mom? Izuku asked, raising an eyebrow, turning to face his mother. Nothing at all, sweetheart. She looked back to the table as if she hadn't said a word. After everything was clean, you started to head for the door. A part of you didn't want to go yet, but you also didn't want to overstay the welcome. It was really nice meeting you, Midoriya. I'm gonna head back to my place now, so I'll see you guys later. You gave a small wave while closing the door back behind you. Izuku's POV. I told you that Y/N was a great girl, Izuku. My mother said while casually standing in front of the sink washing the cups that everyone used earlier. Yeah, you did. I think she seems really sweet, though I'm a little worried that she may think I'm weird. I did come out of the bathroom in only a towel, so her first impression of me probably isn't great. I sighed. I don't believe she thinks you're weird, dear. It was an accident after all. She said, turning off the water.
Oh.
Izuku, I completely forgot to ask Y/N if she wanted to come over tomorrow for dinner. Would you mind going over and asking her for me? Yeah, I don't mind. The thought of talking to her more made me smile. I walked into the empty hallway and stood in front of your door. As I brought his fist up to knock on the door, a nervous feeling ran through my entire body. I looked around for a moment and began to panic, checking to see if anyone had seen me standing there like an idiot. Then I turned around and went back into my mom's apartment. Smooth, Izuku. Real smooth. What did she say? Well, about that. I paused for a moment because I was a little embarrassed that I lost my nerve. I didn't ask her because I got nervous. I'm not sure why though. I looked down at my feet and rubbed the back of my neck. Izuku, you can do it. There's no need for you to be nervous. She gave her best smile. You're right. I'm going to try again. I straightened up and walked back to her apartment. I knocked lightly and waited for an answer. When she opened the door, she was wearing her pajamas. My face instantly flashed red upon seeing her like that. You could easily tell she had fell asleep. She's so cute when she's half asleep. I quickly snapped out of my trance-like state, bringing my eyes back up to meet hers. Oh, Midoriya. What brings you over? She leaning on the door frame a bit. Would you like to have dinner tomorrow? I asked quickly before losing my nerve. She just stared at for a moment without giving an answer. Oh no. I already messed that up. It sounded like I was asking her on a date or something. And not like that Well, Mom wanted to know if you would like to come over for dinner with us tomorrow.
If you aren't busy or anything.
I frantically waved my hands around, trying not to die of embarrassment. That sounds nice. It's been a long time since I've had dinner with anyone. She giggled a bit, covering her mouth with her hand. I want to see her laugh more. It sounds like honey in the air.
Great.
I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, see you tomorrow then. She gave a half-lidded smile as I turned to leave. My heart was beating so loud while I was talking to her, I was scared that she would hear it. When I got back into my mother's apartment, I closed the door and smiled to myself, just thinking about seeing her again tomorrow. While sitting at home alone on couch, you wondered what you should wear for the dinner tonight. You were unsure of how to should dress. You wanted to look nice because it's been years since having dinner with other people. Also because you would be seeing the #1 hero again. He was a pro after all, so you wanted to look presentable. On the other hand, You didn't want to wear something that would say that you were trying too hard. You had never really been one to go out of your way to impress people, but you couldn't help being excited for this because when you were with him, you were never allowed to go anywhere. After about an hour of rummaging through your closet, you finally found a F/C dress. Well, this dress is a little shorter than I remember, but it will have to do. After finishing getting ready, you picked out the best bottle of wine you had to take over to Inko's. You locked the door and headed to her apartment a few minutes early. You knocked and she answered, allowing you in and taking the bottle of wine from your hand. Oh, Y/N. You look appealing, dear. She grabbed both of your hands and pulled them to her chest. Thank you. I wasn't sure what I should wear, and it's been a while since I last went shopping. You said in almost a whisper while your cheeks pinked at her words. Izuku, dear, Y/N is here. She pulled you into the living room behind her. Make yourself comfortable. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. She walked back to the kitchen, leaving you alone, so you decided to look around the room at the pictures on the wall of Izuku when he was a child. He looked so happy as a kid. Even now he looks happy. It made you smile knowing that they both found a way to move forward even when Inko's husband abandoned them. Eventually, Izuku emerged from the hall bathroom. He looked up from the ground to meet your eyes and completely froze. For a moment, you saw a hint of something a little different in his eyes as he looked at you. You just couldn't place what it was. You both stood for a moment, then you tore your gaze away from his green eyes and spoke first to break the silence. Trailing his appearance, it seemed as if he wanted to look nice as well. He wore a white button-up dress shirt and black also. You couldn't help but notice that a few buttons were undone, letting a bit of his chest show. Omi look really nice, you said, looking him up and down shyly. Both of your faces flushed red. I was about to say the same thing to you. He gave a light laugh and rubbed the back of his neck. Thanks, you said in an upbeat tone, trying to make things less awkward between you and him. Inko said that dinner would be ready in a little while. Both of you took a seat on the couch next to each other. Neither of you really knew what to say at this point. Hey, Midoriya. What's it like to be a hero? You asked, looking at your feet. You can call me Izuku if you want, or Deku. That's what my friends call me. He nervously said. So, the #1 hero has time for friends, huh? You jokingly said. Yeah, I make time for people I care about when I can, but being a hero is hard sometimes because you can't save everyone. His tone turned a little sad. I see. You paused a moment to think. You know, I bet you've saved more people than you've lost, so look at it that way. Life isn't always kind or fair, but at least people have something to put their hope in. Diana. You gave a bright smile and put your hand over his. He looked at you wide-eyed for a moment, then his eyes softened, and he gave a gentle smile. Thank you for that, L/N. Maybe this could actually work. Maybe I can be happy. Call me Y/N. Inko walked into the room and announced that dinner was ready. You pulled your hand away from his and quickly jumped up from the couch. Everyone sat down at the table and started to eat. This food is so good, Inko. I would love if you could show me how to make this sometime. You took a drink of wine. Thank you, Y/N. This is actually one of Izuku's favorite dishes that I make. She said to you. I can see why this is your favorite, Izuku. You said with a light smile. Oh my, I didn't know you two were on a first-name basis already. Inko interrupted with a wide grin. We just decided a little bit ago, actually. But it's not a big deal or anything, he said, trying to brush off the statement. Inko gave a sly smile that only you could see, which made you return hers with an awkward one. You know, Izuku here is quite the little chief himself. I'm sure he could teach you how to make it better than I could. He pointed to her son. That sounds great. I'd really like that. You blushed at the idea of spending time alone with him. Ring, ring, ring. Looking down to your phone, you recognized the number and froze for a moment. You tried to ignore the ringing and put the phone on silent, but still the constant vibration coming from it was slightly annoying. Y/N, is everything okay? You can take the call if it's important. Inko said with a concerned look. You nodded your head and walked into the bathroom, closing the door behind you. When you answered the phone, you heard the one voice that you truly dreaded. The voice that you were terrified of. Hey baby, I've really missed you. he said, sounding irritated. A chill crept up your spine, and you paused for a moment before speaking. Kazuki, for the last time, just stop calling me. Leave me alone. You started to panic. Listen, how many times do I have to tell you about speaking to me like that, or do I really have to remind you? He spat with venom in his voice.
No.
You listen, I'm done with you, and I'm not going to keep living like this. You can't find me, and you can't hurt me anymore. You spat back, matching his tone. I wouldn't get so comfortable talking to me like that if I were you, Beach. You know how angry that makes me. Oh, and make sure you enjoy the rest of your night while you can. His tone sounded cocky. F you? You hung the phone up quickly. You looked in the mirror for a moment, trying to calm your nerves before heading out of the bathroom. Making your way back to the table, you tried to pretend that you were fine. In reality, you were breaking down. There were 1,000 things running through your mind at once, but there was only one thing that you could hear loud and clear. He found me. You sat back down and finished the rest of the wine in your cup and immediately poured another glassful. While finishing the rest of our dinner, you really didn't say much other than answering a few casual questions here and there. Y/N. Are you alright? You really haven't said much since you came back from using the phone. Izuku asked me with a worried look in his eyes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm totally fine. I think I'm going to head home, though. I'm really tired. You stood and walked towards the door. You really hated lying to them, but didn't want to burden anyone else with your problems and wouldn't dare disrupt the happiness they held on to. Thank you so much, Inko, for everything. You'll never know how much it meant to me. You said without looking back. I'll see you around, Izuku. Inko and Izuku exchanged worried and confused looks as the door closed. Breaking down as soon as the door closed behind you, you stood in the hallway for a moment, just trying to catch your breath. When you walked into your apartment, it was dark all except for a lamp near the couch. Slumping down against the door in relief that you was alone, you tried calming your nerves. You made your way into the kitchen and opened a bottle of wine. You started drinking straight from the bottle until it was nearly gone. While entering the living room and on the light, you realized that someone else was here. The almost empty bottle crashed to the ground, shattering on the floor. Baby, there you are. I've been looking everywhere for you, you know. He smirked.
Kazuki.
You couldn't move. You just stood there wide-eyed and scared in front of him. He slowly started approaching with a sadistic smile carved on his face. I told you that I would always find you, and you know how much I hate when you run off like this. He barked in a low, intimidating tone. In that moment, you turned to run away from him as fast as your feet would go. Pure adrenaline was pumping through your body. When reaching the front door, your fingertips touched the cold metal of the knob, and then there was a burning sensation that ran across the back of your head. He had grabbed a hand off of your hair and pulled you away from the door, dragging you back into the living room, kicking and sobbing. Am I really going to die like this? I have to get away from him.
Right now.
He threw you down on the floor and stood over you with a look of pure rage on his face. Why are you wearing this? Have you been sleeping with another man?
No.
Just dinner with a friend. Your voice was low as you tried to calm his rage. Liar. No one would want to be friends with you. A girl like you is only good for so much. Don't you see that I'm the only person who could ever want someone like you? He then crouched down and ripped the dress you were wearing off of you, leaving you in your underwear. He wrapped his hands around your neck as you went to scream for help. He put pressure on your throat, causing your voice to sound muffled. If you scream, I will kill everyone in this building and it will be your fault. He whispered in your ear and gave a sadistic laugh before he continued. You know just how dangerous my quirk is, baby. Do you really want more BLD on your hands? It's your fault your parents are dead, and it will be your fault if I have to kill anyone here. You looked around the room for a way out, trying to claw at his face to push him away. You had a moment of realization then. No one was coming to save you, and you were alone like always. Nothing was different, and nothing has changed. He activated his quirk, causing you to get a severe headache that kept you from moving from the cold floor. Releasing his iron grip that held you, he spoke softly as he stood. Remember that this is your fault for leaving me again. You brought this on yourself. Please. You don't have to do this. I won't run anymore. I promise. You cried with tears still running down your face. Your words were quickly cut off with a hard kick to the ribs, instantly breaking a few of them. The kicking continued for a while until the pain was too unbearable that you blacked out. When you woke up, you were laying on the ground with BLD staining your lips. You looked around the room trying to steady your blurry vision, noticing that it was daylight already and that your apartment was completely trashed from his tantrum. He was sitting on the couch flipping through channels on the television as if he didn't just almost beat you to death. He saw that you were now trying to pull yourself up on your feet, and he walked over to you. Have you learned your lesson about humiliating me yet, baby? People talk, you know. He sighed, and then continued. Don't worry, I forgive you. I'm not going to kill you, but I do hope you realize that this is getting very tiresome. He had an evil look in his eyes. You said nothing, knowing how it would end if you had. Stop laying around and get up already. I'm starving. He flopped back down on the couch and turned his attention back to the TV. Numbness flooded through your body because over the years, you had got used to this heavy feeling that lingered in your heart. You were so close. You almost got away this time, only long enough for a single taste of that freedom you craved for so long. After only a few hours of being in the same room with this man, that sinking, hopeless feeling returned stronger than ever. When night fell again, he approached you while you held your knees tight to your chest in the floor, afraid to move. Baby, I have a few things to take care of, so I have to go out for a little while, but I'll be back before you know it. I know how much you miss me when I'm gone, he said in an airy tone, running his fingers through your messy hair. Looking up into his cold, heartless eyes, you began crying yet again. He grabbed your face hard enough to leave a bruise, making you whimper in pain. If I come back and you're gone, I will make you regret it. You belong to me, don't forget that. He pressed his lips to yours, and it made you sick to your stomach. We're going back home when I return. Go shower and be ready to leave. With that, he slammed the door behind him and left. I can't live like this anymore. There's only one thing left to do. After you were sure he was gone, you got up from the floor, trying not to cause any more pain due to the injuries he left. You went into the bathroom and closed the door, looking into the mirror at your bruised body. After a moment, you opened the medicine cabinet and pulled out a pill bottle and untwisted the cap. I'm sorry, Inko Izuku. I hope you can forgive me someday. I had been thinking about 𝑦/N a lot since she had left so abruptly at dinner. If she needed anything or if she was in trouble, she would tell me, wouldn't she? Ring, ring, ring. I pulled my phone from my pocket and checked the caller ID to see that it was Mom calling. Hey Mom, is everything alright? I asked, getting nervous. I was calling because I haven't seen 𝑦/N in since dinner, which is a little unusual. Have you went over there to check on her? Panic soon set in when I realized that my mom is probably worried for a reason. I did, but no one answered, so could you go see if she's okay? Something doesn't feel right, Izuku. Her tone was serious and laced with worry. I really hope she's alright. I knew I should have checked on her sooner, damn it. Yeah, I'm actually only a few minutes away. I hung up the phone and started walking faster until I eventually broke out into a run. Getting to the door of her apartment, I knocked, but there was no answer, and the door was locked. As I went to turn away and leave, I stopped for a moment because I heard the television playing inside. Grabbing the doorknob and activating One for All, I snapped it off like it was child's play. I immediately noticed that her living room looked like a war zone, which really put me on edge. There was broken glass everywhere, and her bookcase was turned on its side. As I looked around more, I noticed the dress she had been wearing the night she came over for dinner. It was ripped, and there was BLD shattered in the floor near it. My mind instantly went to the worst possible outcome from seeing her clothes torn to shreds on the floor. My heart stopped for a moment when I realized that she wasn't okay. Then a heavy feeling weighted on my chest as I began to search around the apartment to find the other rooms in the same condition as the living room. Please, 𝑦/N, just be alive. 𝑦/N. Are you here? I yelled through the dark apartment, only to hear silence in return. I picked up the remote and turned off the television, and that's when he heard it. The only sound that filled the air now was running water and uncontrollable sobbing. 𝑦/N. Are you in there? I put my hand to the door waiting for a response. 𝑦/N. Again, This door was locked as well, but I knew that it was her in there crying. That's when my instincts went into overdrive and I kicked the door down only to find her laying on the floor in her underwear covered in black bruises. Damn it. I didn't make it in time. My heart broke like glass seeing her like this, but I choked back the tears that threatened to fall. After the initial shock of seeing her in such a state, I pulled myself together. That's when I saw the BLD pouring from both of her wrists and a bottle of sleeping pills laying on the ground next to her. I hurried over and went to pick her up from the damp floor, but the crying stopped and she went limp. My heart started skipping beats as I checked for a pulse. Upon feeling the slow thumps of her heart still beating, I picked up the bottle to find it was empty. Grabbing a towel that was hanging on the door, I tore it in half and wrapped up both arms, then gently but quickly picked her up and stuck my fingers down her throat to get her to throw up whatever she had taken. I pulled her messy hair away from her pale face as she finally threw up.
Damn it.
�Y/N. Can you hear me? I shouted while pulling her into my lap, holding her tightly, just trying to get her to respond.
Please, please don't die.
I'm so sorry I wasn't here. The thoughts in my head loudly. Izuku. Her, E/C. Eyes fluttered open softly, and her voice sounded like sandpaper from all the crying. Why did you do this? Tell me what happened. My voice sounded a little harsher than I had intended. Her eyes trailed the room, and she began crying again when she remembered what was going on. You should have just let me die. Her voice was calm and low. Don't say that.
Please.
We just started to get to know each other, and I don't want to lose you. I shook her gently in hopes of keeping her conscious. When I looked back down, she was sleeping but her pulse was steady. I put one arm under her legs and one behind her back, picking her up carefully. I then ran back to my mother's apartment. Oh my God, Izuku. What is going on? Inko's face was wet from tears as soon as she saw the limp, battered body in my arms. I think she tried to kill herself. My face was flushed pale from fear and shock. We need to call 911.
Wait.
She paused and grabbed my arm to make me stop in my tracks. Look at her. Someone did this to her, but I don't know who. I'm not sure it would be a good idea for her to be taken to a public hospital because whoever it was could find her again easily. She calmed her voice before she finished speaking, but her hands were still shaking. Is there anyone you could call that would help her here? You're the #1 hero. Surely someone could do it. I took Y/N to my old room and laid her down on the bed, letting my eyes trail across her bruised and bleeding body. It filled my chest with a heavy burning that made it hard to breathe. When my nerves were more steady, I called the only person that I could think of that would even consider helping without insisting that I take her to the hospital. Recovery girl. After explaining the situation and being scolded, of course, she came rather quickly to help. When Recovery girl arrived, I showed her where I had laid the unconscious girl. Oh dear, this poor child has been through quite a lot, hasn't she? Recovery girl said in her weathered old voice. I'm glad you called me to help. Your mother was right about keeping her here. This is a very delicate situation. She used her quirk to heal her the best that she could. However, she could only close the wounds on Y/N's wrists and fix the broken ribs. Anything more would risk killing her because she had little to no energy left. Recovery girl told me and Mom that Y/N would be asleep for a while, but she would eventually wake up and that we shouldn't leave her alone anytime soon.
With that, she left.
I sat on the floor next to Y/N for a while, occasionally checking to see if she was still breathing. After a few hours of breaking down, I went into the kitchen where my mother was and sat down at the table. I buried my face into my hands that still had her BLD on them and let a few more silent tears fall now that I knew that she wouldn't die. Why didn't I make sure she was okay when she left here? I had a feeling that something was wrong, but I ignored it. Who really knows what she went through when I was just sitting here, right across the hall from her? I spoke with a shaky voice, trying to keep my emotions under control. Y/N never really talked about her life before she moved here, so I didn't want to pry, but I should have. The fault isn't on you alone, son. My mom said, taking a seat at the table while setting a steaming cup of tea in front of me. Why didn't she just say something? I could have done something. I'm a hero, and I couldn't even keep her safe when she needed me. I ran my hands through my hair in frustration. You really care for her already, don't you, son? She asked in an inaudible whisper, then turned to look at me. We won't know everything until she wakes up. All we can do is be here for her now. She placed a hand over my shoulder and offered a comforting smile. We both sat there for a while, letting silence fill the room, waiting for �Y/N to wake up. I'll never let her go through anything like that ever again. I will protect her no matter what. Waking up the next morning with a ringing headache, you pulled your tired body from the bed you had slept on. Feeling your bare feet hit the cold floor sent a chill running down your spine. A large green t-shirt that didn't belong to you wrapped around your small body. It smelled familiar, although you couldn't place the calming scent. Your hazy vision started clearing up, and you found yourself in a room that was new to you. It was rather empty. The only things that stood out were a few All Might posters clinging to the walls. This is weird. Where the hell am I? Memories slowly started flooding your brain of the days before, and panic soon set in. That's when the door creaked open to reveal a mess of green and black hair. �Y/N. Can I come in? He asked in a soft tone. Sure, you said with a nod. He walked in and took a seat beside you, offering a small smile even if he couldn't manage to give a genuine one. Unable to look him in the eye, you shifted your gaze to the floor. Are you feeling any better? I could get you something to eat if you want. His voice was filled with pity, and you hated it. Now you're going to think I'm just some broken girl who needs someone to save her. You'll look at me differently. Silence filled the room for a moment before you spoke.
Why?
Why couldn't you just let me die when I had the chance? Tears starting dripping down your face. I'm a hero. I don't just let people die. Can you please tell me what happened? Who hurt you like this? His voice was soft. He went to wipe tears from your cheek, but before he made contact, you smacked his hand away. Damn it, Izuku. Just stop being so nice to me. You have no idea what you've done. I'll never get away from him now. Don't you get it? Your voice shook with fear and anger as your hands clutched your chest. I would get it if you would just tell me what's going on. Why would you try to kill yourself? If I would have known that you were running from some guy, I would have made sure that 𝐵𝑆TRD never got near you again. His voice sounded angry, which came as a shock because he usually sounded so kind. Why do you care so much?
You don't know anything about me.
You said harshly while getting to your feet to leave, now feeling every bruise that Kazuki left behind. Please, just let me go. I'll only make your life harder. Upon feeling his hand grip yours gently, you turned your gaze to see that his head hung low with his hair covering his green eyes, but there were tears streaming down his face. Don't cry for me, Izuku. But we're friends and I want to know you if you'll let me, he said, looking up at you with a sad smile. This is why I didn't tell you. It breaks my heart to see you cry for me. I'm pathetic. Your voice was barely above a whisper.
No.
You're not. You are incredibly strong. I know that, but there's nothing wrong with asking for help when you need it. He squeezed your hand just a little. I just want to help you. �Y/N. I don't deserve it. I'm not worth the trouble.
Why?
Because it's your job. Or is it because you feel sorry for me? I don't want anyone's pity. You pulled your hand from his. I've been on my own for a long time. I can handle this by myself. You snapped at him. I can't do this to you. �Y/N. Don't push me away. You aren't alone anymore. And I don't pity you. I just care about you. So does my mom. He stood as you turned to face him. You can't keep dealing with the all by yourself. You dropped to the floor on your knees and wrapped your arms around yourself. I'm so tired. Izuku, I am tired of fighting. I'm tired of running. I just want it all to stop. I don't have anywhere else to go. This is it for me. You calmed your voice before continuing. Please, don't make this harder than it already is, because I do want to stay here with Inko with you. But I know I can't, so you just let me go. You began to sob again. I'm too broken. There isn't anything left. Izuku bent down and wrapped his arms around you, pulling you into his chest. You clung to his shirt as you cried. I promise I'll protect you.
Just please let me.
He whispered to you. I'll do anything. Just don't do that ever again. You looked into his eyes as he wiped the tears from your face with his thumb. We will figure everything out, so don't worry. I will keep you safe. I won't let anyone hurt you ever again. �Y/N. He gave a gentle smile. Izuku, his eyes held a softness to them that you had never seen before from anyone. Your chest felt lighter as you heard his words. You pulled yourself closer to him and rested against his chest while his cheek pressed against the top of your head. You both stayed there for a little while longer as you thought about everything. You enjoyed his warmth in silence. You were in awe that both Inko and Izuku were so kind-hearted. You just couldn't believe that they cared for you so much because in truth, you weren't used to anyone caring about you. After a little while longer of letting Izuku comfort you, you got up and put some clothes on that belonged to Inko, then headed for the kitchen. You decided to give freedom one more shot, and you told both Izuku and Inko everything that happened to you over the past few years with Kazuki. Sitting at the table with Inko and Izuku, you laid your head in your hands when you're finished telling them what you had been through. You felt Inko place a hand on your back, trying to comfort you. �Y/N. I'm sorry you had to live through that, and for what it's worth, I'm happy we met. I want to see you smile more and be truly happy, because you deserve that. Izuku said. Your heart skipped a beat hearing what he said. No one had told you anything like that in a long time, and it felt good. Inko removed her hand from your back and turned to look at you.
Don't ever try
something like that again. I would have been devastated if you had died, she said with a determined look on her face. I won't, Inko, I swear. I'm sorry for doing something so stupid, I just didn't know what else to do. You said with a sad tone. You don't have to apologize, but know that I worry about you just as much as I worry about Izuku. Her tone softened and you simply nodded. I'm totally screwed now, because I can't afford to move again, and I know he's been back to my apartment by now. He's probably seen the BLD and is looking for me at local hospitals. You paused with a worried look before continuing. I think he might actually kill me this time, if he finds me. What am I going to do now? I have an idea. I'm not sure how you'll feel about it though, Izuku said then. He trailed off muttering about something I couldn't quite make out. What is it? Inko asked with a puzzled look.
You can live with me,
he replied with a shy smile. I couldn't do that to you. I'll just be in your way, you said, waving your hands around in panic.
We could be roommates.
My place is too big for just me anyways, and I promised you that I would protect you. �Y/N. You can find your own place after I take Kazuki to jail, and I know that you're safe. He looked into your eyes. Please, just consider it. He's right, dear. That would be the best option. If you stayed here with me, that man could find you pretty easily. You would have a better chance staying close to Izuku, because he's a hero. Inko interjected. Well, what do you say? I promise that you'll be able to live as freely as you want, and I'll give you as much space as you need. I just want to make sure you're all right. He smiled. I'm working most of the time anyway, so you'll have privacy there. Okay, you paused. I promise I'll leave as soon as I can. I don't want to make things harder for you. You quietly answered. Izuku beamed with excitement as he stood up from the table. This will be great. I've been thinking about tons of fun stuff for us to do, so we can get to know each other better. We can cook together and have movie marathons and dash. He stopped talking when he noticed that he was being over-enthusiastic about the situation. Sorry, I am just excited about not being alone all the time. My other friends are usually too busy with work to hang out. He rubbed the back of his neck with a nervous smile. Izuku, thank you, you said in a soft tone. He blushed and turned away from the table, trying to hide it. You're welcome, �Y/N. His own tone was as soft as yours. After a few cups of tea to relax your nerves, you and Izuku went to your apartment to pack up your things and clean up the mess, which took most of the day. Time skipped to Izuku's house. Izuku showed you around your new home and helped you set up your stuff in the spare room. When that was finished, you two decided to have dinner, which Izuku volunteered to make. It was just some simple sushi, but it was delicious. You really are a good cook, aren't you, Izuku? You said with a mouthful of food. He laughed a little. I'm all right, but there's still a lot more I would like to learn about it. Could you teach me a few recipes sometime? I'd love to. I know you'll be great at it. He smiled. Returning the smile with one of your own, the two of you enjoyed the rest of your meal in comfortable silence. You were helping Izuku clean up the kitchen. He put away the leftover food and turned to you. I've decided to take some time off from work until you fully healed. You should really take some time to rest before you go back to work too,
he said.
You really don't have to do that. I don't want you to have to change up your life to babysit me. You ran your hands through your hair. I already called to let them know I would be out for a week or two, so it's fine. I don't really remember the last time I used my vacation days since I started my own hero agency, so I needed a break anyway. He smiled gently at me. I'm sorry that you have to do all this just for me, but I'll call May in the morning to tell her I'll be out for a little while. You hung your head low. Y/N. Please don't apologize for anything. I want to do this. I'm actually pretty excited about having time off to hang out with you. He placed a hand on your head and grinned. I'm excited too. You smiled to him with a half-lidded grin. I don't really have any idea what to do, so you may have to make the plans. I haven't spent time with anyone other than Inko in a long time. That won't be a problem. I told you this morning that I had a few things we could do together. He moved his hand from your head, letting it fall back to his side. Why are you doing all this for me? Your voice was laced with guilt. Honestly, I want to show you all the things in life that makes it worth waking up every day. His tone sounded like silk. You simply nodded, unable to find proper words. It's getting late, and you've had a rough couple of days.
You should get some rest.
He turned to walk to his room, then stopped to look back at you. Plus, good night. Y/N. I'll see you in the morning. Good night, Izuku. Thanks for everything. You both exchanged smiles and went to your rooms for the night. As you closed the door to your room, you changed into your pajamas, which consisted of a F/C tank top and black shorts, and laid down in the bed. You thought about everything that's happened over the past couple days, and your mind wandered back to the kind man who slept across the hall from you. After a little while, you began to drift off to sleep, only to have another nightmare. Nightmares start. You looked around the room you were in to see kids you went to school with. They pointed and laughed at you. Quirkless freak. Worthless. Just kill yourself already. You screamed for them to shut up. Still, they continued to make fun of you until you started fighting with one of the kids that bullied you regularly. We're calling your parents to come get you. You're suspended for fighting with the other kids, the teacher said in a disgusted tone. Scene skip. You were now in a busy street filled with police cars and people. As you looked around, you saw your parents' car totaled in the middle of the road. You sat in the back of an ambulance completely dazed until you heard someone speak. I'm sorry, kid. They're both dead. Do you have anyone else to stay with? A police officer placed a hand on your shoulder. I have no one. You spoke through your tears. For you to survive something like this is a miracle though, kid. Be grateful you're still alive. He turned and walked away. Scene skip. You little beach. A man yelled, striking your face hard enough to knock you to the ground. Your face stung with pain, but you didn't dare let a single tear fall. I never signed up to foster someone as useless as you, he yelled, then grabbed your arms and activation his quirk, which left a burn mark. You screamed out in pain. You can't do anything right, can you? He smirked. Your vision blurred. Scene skip. Kazuki stood over top of you with his hands locked tightly around your neck. Your vision was blurred from lack of oxygen. You saw the same look on his face that everyone else gave you. Disgust. This is your fault. If you hadn't been born so weak, then maybe your parents would be alive. You deserved everything you got. No one could ever love you. They probably wished that you had never been born. His words began to fade out as your vision darkened until everything went black. Scene skip. As your vision cleared, all you saw was two outlines of bodies laying on the ground in front of you, while another outline stood over them. You stepped closer while holding your breath, praying the situation wasn't how it appeared from a distance. When you got close enough, you realized that it was Izuku and Inko on the ground, cold and lifeless. You sank to your knees and sobbed loudly, then turned your attention to the person who stood over them with BLD on their hands. What did you do? This is your fault. You screamed, clutching your chest. As the culprit turned to face you, your eyes widened in shock and you felt like throwing up. It was you with their BLD on your hands. Nightmare. And you sat up quickly, screaming and crying while pushing the hands that rested on your shoulders away. You were so frightened that you forgot where you were until you finally heard a familiar voice over your heavy breathing. Y/N. It's okay. It was only a dream. You're safe now. I'm right here. Just breathe. Izuku. You instantly stopped struggling and collapsed into his chest still, allowing your tears to fall quietly as he wrapped you into a tight hug to calm your nerves. I didn't mean to dash. You chalked out through your cries, but he just pulled you closer and told you everything was okay. After about 15 minutes of silence, you had finally calmed down and pulled away from him to speak. I'm sorry for waking you. I know it's late. You said in a tone that was no louder than a whisper, looking down at your hands that rested in your lap. He gently pulled your chin up, allowing your glossy eyes to meet his. Y/N, are you okay? His green eyes showed concern. Why is it so hard to breathe right now? My heart feels like it's about to explode. Your chest tightened as you felt heat pull to your face. So you thanked the universe that the only light that illuminated the room was moonlight from the open window. I'm fine, you said, trying to keep your voice from shaking. How did you know I was having a nightmare? He removed his hand from your face and looked away for a moment. I heard you screaming and I got worried, so I came to check on you, but I couldn't get you to wake up.
Oh.
You hand traveled to the spot his hand laid, wishing it was still there. Both of you sat there for a moment in silence before he spoke again. Do you want to talk about it? He asked in a soft tone.
No.
I'm really okay. You should go back to sleep. You said, trying to brush off the fact that you wouldn't be able to go back to sleep for a while. I'm okay. Can I get you anything before I go back to my room?
No.
I'm fine. You gave a half-hearted smile, but he could see in your eyes that you weren't fine. Not wanting to pressure you, he slowly stood up and went into the kitchen. You could hear glass and silverware hitting together. What in the world is he doing in there? It's so late. He walked back into your room with a bowl filled with ice cream. Here, this will make you feel better. He smiled so wide at you that it made your heart beat a little faster. Thank you. You stuttered a bit as you took the bowl from his hand. He didn't say anything, he just kept that wide smile of his and turned to leave. If you need me, I'm here. Please, don't hesitate to ask for anything. Good night. You sat in your bed, eating the ice cream that Izuku brought to you. After you finished it, you went to the kitchen and washed the bowl, then returned to your room. You tossed and turned for a few minutes, unable to get back to sleep because you were scared of having another horrible nightmare. You got up from your bed and found yourself in front of Izuku's bedroom door. Thump thump, I woke up to the sound of knocking, so I slowly stood up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes before opening the door. Y/N stood there with her cheeks dusted pink when she realized that I was shirtless, and in only my all-night pajama, I felt my voice get stuck in my throat as I looked at her. What's the matter? Is everything all right? I asked, starting to get a little worried about her. I'm really sorry about waking you up. Again. I just couldn't get back to sleep, she said shyly, which caused me to lightly smile. It's fine. I told you to ask me if you needed anything, so I'm glad you woke me up. I smiled at her and leaned against my door frame. She pulled on her fingers. I could tell she was nervous. I could make you some tea if you want, whatever you need. I said, trying to reassure her that it was okay, that she needed me. Never mind. It's kind of stupid to ask. I've bothered you enough for one night. She turned to go back to her room, but I grabbed her hand to keep her from running away. When she turned to look at me, I felt my heartbeat quicken just a little. She was wearing a tank top and shorts, really short shorts. Stop looking at her like that, you'll creep her out. Wait. I stopped for a moment to mentally slap myself. It's not a problem, I promise. Just tell me what you need. My voice was deep and low from just waking up. She turned to look at me, and her eyes showed how unsure she was. I was going to ask you if you would stay with me for a little while, just until I fell back to sleep. Her tone was quiet and soft as she turned her gaze to the floor. Without much hesitation, I answered her while taking a step closer to the girl that stood in front of me. Of course I will. I'll stay as long as you need me to. Y/N. I tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. She simply nodded her head as I intertwined my fingers with hers. You can go back to your room as soon as I'm asleep. I don't want to be any trouble to you, she said, looking into my eyes, and stopped a moment before continuing. I just feel better when you're around. So thank you. Her words trailed off as she turned to lead me into her room. She let go of my hand and crawled into bed, pulling the blanket open to invite me in. We laid next to each other without touching or speaking for a little bit, but it slowly started to get less awkward as we talked. "Do you have nightmares often?" I asked, looking up to the ceiling. She signed as flipped over to face me. "Yeah, I used to have them a lot when I was younger, but I've been having them a lot recently though." "Want to tell me what you dreamed about?" "It's the same dream I always have, but this time something new happened." She paused before continuing. "I've never really talked to anyone about them before, so I don't know where to start." "Why haven't you ever told anyone?" A puzzled look ran across my face for a moment. "No one has ever asked." Her answer was simple, but I could tell that there was more to it because was so simple. She then changed the subject to something more lighthearted. "So you must really like All Might, huh?" "Yeah, I do. He's my mentor, but even before that I was kind of a fanboy." I avoided eye contact with her because I was a little embarrassed. "I can tell. When I was in your old room, there were posters of him hanging on the walls. Not to mention your PJs." She giggled a little, which made me happy. "You're pretty observant, aren't you?" I laughed and covered my red face with my hands. "I guess you could say that." She gave a sleepy smile. "Is he the reason you wanted to be a hero?" "Definitely. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with how awesome he was, because he saved everyone with a smile." I beamed down at her. I started to ramble on for what felt like forever about my favorite childhood heroes. My rant was suddenly cut short when I looked over to see that she was fast asleep. She looks so peaceful when she sleeps. I'm glad I was able to help. Before I knew what I was doing, I found my hand lightly brushing through her hair. As I went to pull away, I felt her arms wrap around me. I froze for a second before smiling down at her. I didn't really know what to do, because I didn't want to wake her up after she had just fallen back to sleep, so I decided to stay for a while. I saw her cuddling me. Then I pulled her closer and wrapped my arm around her and had her head resting on my chest. She stirred for a moment, then stopped after she got comfortable again. Laying there next to her, I began thinking about how happy it made me to have her next to me. The circumstances really 𝐒𝐿, but I'm glad she's here. Is it selfish of me to be a little happy that she's laying in my arms right now? I stayed still for a little while just rubbing her arm with my thumb and listening to the sound of her breathing, but my eyes started to feel heavy as thoughts ran through my head. She's going through a lot right now, but all I want is to see her enjoy her life and smile. I'll be there for her no matter what. I'll be her hero. Good night, �Y/N. I spoke in a whisper as I fell into a dreamless sleep. As your eyes fluttered open, you saw that someone had their arms wrapped tightly around you. Before you could move, you started to remember everything that happened last night. You had asked Izuku to stay with you after you had a nightmare, and he was still here when you woke up. Did he really stay here with me all night? A blush covered your cheeks as you tried to move from the bed without waking him up, but you couldn't escape his grip. You took a moment as looked over the green-haired man's face, then raised a hand to touch his face, just to make sure that all of this was real. Your small hands rested on his cheek, and you smiled at his sleeping form until you realized that his eyes were open. "No, he's gonna think I'm totally weird." You pulled your hand back quickly, and he gave a charming smile while laughing softly at your coldness. "Good morning, �Y/N. "Morning, I didn't mean to wake you." You shyly pulled the blanket over the bottom of your face to hide your red cheeks as he let you go. "I wish he would have stayed asleep a little longer. He smells so good." You mentally slapped yourself at the thought of him laying in bed with you and pulled the blanket completely over your head. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I just fell asleep last night." He ran his hands through his hair. Then he raised up. "I'll go now." You grabbed onto his shoulder to stop from leaving so soon. "It's okay, I don't mind you falling asleep with Might's kind of nice," you said, while peeking from the blanket.
"What is wrong with me?"
"Why can't I just shut up?" He smiled and patted the top of your head. "I told you that I'll be here for you, whatever you need. Thank you again for everything." Your tone was quiet and soft. "You're welcome, but please stop thanking me so much. Are you hungry? I could make breakfast for us." He pulled himself from the bed and went into his room to get dressed for the day. As soon as he closed the door, You ripped the blanket off of you and sighed thinking about the time you've spent with Izuku, and it made you smile. After a few minutes, you got up and grabbed your towel, heading to the bathroom. You played your favorite song and went through your normal routine, singing loudly as the warm water rolled down your body. You enjoyed singing, but you hadn't done it in a while because Kazuki would usually yell at you to shut up. On your way back to your room to get dressed, you completely zoned out and ran into something hard. You rubbed your forehead as you looked up to see Izuku standing in front of you in gray sweat and a t-shirt. And I'm naked, of course. I'm freaking naked, I'm sorry, I should have been watching where I was going, you said shyly, while pulling your towel tighter around you. It's fine. I was just coming to tell you that breakfast is ready. He looked away from you and scratched the back of his head nervously. You suddenly remembered something that made you smile, feeling not as awkward. I guess we're even now. The first time we met, you were in a towel. You said through your laughter. He relaxed when he heard you laugh and smiled. I guess you're right, he said with an amused look on his face. I'm gonna go get dressed, I'll be out to eat in just a minute. You started walking back to your room with a bright smile. You pulled out a cute outfit and got dressed, then headed for the kitchen to eat your breakfast. It smells so good in here. You ran to the table and grabbed your plate, taking a seat across from Izuku. Thanks, I never felt the need to make a lot of food when it's just me here in the mornings, but I'll start making breakfast for us from now on. That would be great. Thank you. You smiled widely. I'd like to cook for you sometime too. I can only cook a few things, but you could always teach me to make a couple of dishes you like. You two finished breakfast, then cleaned up. You made your way to the living room and took a seat on the couch, turning on the news. Would you like something to drink? He called from the kitchen. Sure, anything would be fine. You yelled back. He walked in, handed you a F/D, and took a seat next to you. Anything interesting happening? He asked. Nah, just the same old stuff. You sighed. You both sat there, watching television for a while, until you heard his phone ringing. He pulled his phone from the pocket of his sweats and answered it. You could hear Inko's voice on the other end of the phone. Hey, Mom. Hi, sweetheart. I was just calling to check in on you, and Y/N. Inko said from the other end of the phone. We're fine, we just finished having breakfast a little while ago, and we're watching a little TV now. Oh, good. So how is everything going between you two? I hope you're getting along while being there all alone. She asked in a sly tone. I don't know what you mean, Mom. He laughed nervously as he jumped up to walk to the kitchen. I wonder why he looked so nervous. You brushed off the thought as you went back to watching TV. Soon after, he came back into the room with an arm full of snacks. Wanna have a movie marathon? I know you're still probably sore, so I figured we could just relax today and order takeout for dinner. He smiled as he laid everything on the coffee table. That sounds perfect. You jumped up and ran to your room, grabbing a blanket and pillow. You flopped down on the couch as Izuku turned off the lights and asked you to pick something to watch. Hours went by as you two sat on the couch together, laughing, talking, and watching several movies. Do you want to watch a scary movie next? You looked over to see that he was asleep. You laid his head on your lap and covered him up. You turned on another movie, but your attention was focused on the man in your lap, sitting there running your fingers through his hair until you felt your eyes get heavy. You felt brave for a moment, confident he wouldn't wake up. You leaned down and gently kissed his cheek. Good night, Izu. You smiled to yourself. Plus then you drifted off to sleep. It was around 6 a.m. when I woke up to see that Y/N and I had fallen asleep on the couch together after watching movies last night. It took me a few minutes to realize that I was laying in her lap and she had her fingers wrapped in my hair. Did she lay me down when I fell asleep? I remember dozing off on the other side of the couch. I slowly pulled myself up, trying not to wake her up, and picked her up to carry her to her room. As I laid her down, I covered her up and closed the door. Heading straight for the kitchen, I turned on the coffee machine and then took a shower. I stood there for a while, enjoying the warmth of the water running over my face, but my mind couldn't help but to let my head fill with thoughts of her. She's so amazing and kind. Anyone else that was in her situation would probably be cold, but not her. She's the opposite of cold. When my shower was over, I poured a cup of coffee and started on breakfast. I was so wrapped up in my own thoughts while I was cooking that I didn't even hear Y/N walk into the kitchen behind me. "Morning, Izuku," she said in an upbeat tone, startling me. I jumped at the sudden sound and managed to drop the cup in my hand. Pieces of glass slid across the floor at my feet. I turned around slowly and gave her a stiff smile while I scratched the back of my head. It was a little embarrassing to be so clumsy being the #1 hero and all. "Good morning, �Y/N. Sorry about that, you just scared me a little." I laughed awkwardly. Her cheery attitude shifted quickly to panic and fear almost instantly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Bending down quickly to pick up the chunks of glass, I noticed that she had cut her finger, but said nothing as she continued cleaning up the mess. It was an accident. Does she think I'll be mad at her about the plate? It makes me wonder what she's had to go through with that, but for her to be so afraid over something small like this. I crouched down to her level and gently touched her hand, stopping her from picking up any more glass. Her gaze shifted from our hands then to my face. She went wide-eyed as I gave her a stern look. "Y/N. I paused as I looked her in the eyes. "Please, don't ever be afraid that I'll be upset with you over something like this. It was an accident." I took the glass from her hand, set it on the ground, and pulled her back to her feet slowly. "You're bleeding," I said softly. I looked to the ground and saw that she was barefoot, so I picked her up and sat her on the kitchen counter because I didn't want her to step in glass. She looked confused when I trailed off down the hall and returned with a first aid kit. She didn't speak as I cleaned the cut on her finger and bandaged it up. Then I swept up that glass, just trying to let her calm down, but she was still sitting there with her head down like she was waiting for a punishment. It made my heart hurt to see her look like that. "Are you scared of me, Y/N?" I asked softly, turning to face her. She quickly snapped her head up, and tears slipped down her cheeks. "And no," she choked out through her tears. "I didn't mean to react like that. You always make me feel safe. I don't want you to think that I'm scared of you, Izuku. I'm so sorry." She buried her face in her hands and continued to sob. I wrapped my arms around her shoulders, pulling her close to me while she cried. After a few minutes, I felt her hands on my back and she buried her face onto my chest. "I'll never hurt you, Y/N. I promise. I won't let anyone else hurt you, either, not ever." I whispered to her, tightening my arms around her. She had been through so much, and her smile was a broken one. I promised myself that no matter what, I would make her smile for real from now on. We sat there together like that for half an hour more, then I finished making our breakfast, and we ate in comfortable silence until she spoke. "Hey, Izuku." She glanced up at me for only a second, then returned her gaze back to the plate in front of her. What is it?" I asked between bites. I was gonna ask either, but how did I get back to my room last night? She blushed lightly.
"Oh."
"I carried you to bed when I woke up on the couch." I smiled at her. "Thanks, that was really nice of you." She looked flustered. It was adorable. "Well, you covered me up last night, so it was the least I could do," I said smoothly. "I really liked watching movies with you, and I like spending time with you," she said lowly. "I appreciate everything you've been doing for me. I'm glad we're friends." "Friends? Why does that bother me? I mean, that's what we are after all, just friends, me too." I gave a sad smile. "What's wrong?" Her eyes were laced with concern.
"Oh."
"It's nothing. I'm fine, really. Don't worry." I waved her off, trying to pretend like nothing was wrong, even though it felt like I had been kicked in the chest. I stood up from the table and started cleaning up the living room as Y/N went to go get dressed for the day. All I want is to make her happy, even if that's all we will ever be. "Hey, I have a great idea. Let's go shopping and I can make dinner for us tonight." Y/N jumped up and down with excitement. I felt my heartbeat quicken when I saw her smile, like it always did. I agreed, and we went to pick some things up for later. Dinner was great. We laughed and talked, but a part of me was still a little sad thinking of what she had said to me earlier. Still, it felt nice to get to know her better. Soon after we finished our meals, we both went to our rooms to turn in for the night. I laid in my bed flat on my back with my arm covering my eyes, lost in thought about the appealing girl across the hall. Damn it, Y/N. I think I'm falling in love with you. Everything went pretty smoothly for the past 3 weeks. You and Izuku had both went back to work about a week ago. The two of you had been able to spend the mornings together, but since you both worked late, you take turns making dinner and putting some away for the other. At night, you usually found yourself in Izuku's room. Waking up together was becoming somewhat of a habit now, but neither of you minded. He would leave his bedroom door cracked a little in case you decided to just slip in when you didn't want to wake him. The way Inko talked, he worked all the time, but he had been home a lot more than you thought he'd be. It was nice having him around, though. You made sure to visit Inko at least twice a week. Today was one of those days, and it was also one of your days off. You helped Izuku make some breakfast before he had to leave for work, then you got yourself ready to go to her place. You stepped into Inko's apartment, slipped off your shoes, and headed for your usually place at the table. Have they got any word about finding that man who hurt you? She asked while taking a seat next to me. Not yet. Honestly, at this rate, I think I'll never be out of poor Izuku's hair. You laughed playfully. That wouldn't be so bad though, I like staying with him. You shook the dough from your head as you sighed, tapping your fingertips on the glass in your hand. Speaking of that son of mine, has he been taking care of you, dear? Inko asked while sipping her tea. Of course, he's been amazing actually. You blushed a little thinking about how the two of you slept in the same bed almost every night. I'm glad you two have each other. I know he's grateful to have you around. I'm really surprised he's been taking more days off here lately too. She sighed happily, propping her head up on her hand. He saved me, so I'm the one who should be grateful. You lightly laughed. Y/N. She placed a hand over yours before continuing. Believe it or not, you saved him too. What do you mean? You asked with a confused tone, furrowing your eyebrows. He worked so much before he met you because he was always alone. I mean, yes, being a hero was always his dream, but there isn't much crime anymore. He just tried his hardest to stay busy. She closed her eyes and gave a warm smile. Really? You asked, completely shocked. Come to think of it, I've never really seen anyone come over to visit him. You trailed off in thought. You're very special to him. For some reason, her words made your heart beat a little faster. You finished your tea session and gathered your things, deciding it was time to head back home for the night, since it was your turn to cook dinner. As you walked down the street, you allowed your thought so run wild. I'm special to him. What does that even mean? Yes, we're friends, but does he want me to go? He only let me stay with him to keep me safe because he's a hero, so I can't be that important to him, right? He's so nice that he would have done this for anyone, wouldn't he? You unlocked the front door and decided that you would let it go for now. You let your eyes wander around the house for a few minutes and smiled, thinking about how happy you've been here. You couldn't remember the last time you were happy like this, but then your smile slowly turned somber. This won't last forever. As soon as Kazuki is put behind bars, I'll have to leave him. You sat down slowly in one of the chairs at the kitchen table all alone and rested your head in your hands. I'd better make the most of my time here with him. Hopefully, he still wants to hang out with me after all of this is over. After a much-needed bath, you threw on a long t-shirt that hung to your thighs and a pair of socks, knowing that Izuku usually didn't come home until way later. You blasted your favorite playlist and started cooking while singing loudly into a whisk and dancing around the kitchen as you cooked. It was quite a shock when you heard the sound of laughter coming from behind you, considering it was only 3 p.m. You slowly spun around and saw Izuku standing there with a hand covering his mouth, trying his hardest to contain his amusement at what he just came home to. Just how long have you been standing there? You puffed your cheeks out and crossed your arms. Long enough to see the finale. He released his hand from his mouth and threw his head back, laughing loudly. I could listen to that forever. You watched him laugh and smiled to yourself before speaking again. Joke's on you, buddy. You haven't seen nothing yet. You laughed and went right back to singing and dancing around like a goofball. He continued laughing as he began dancing and singing along with you, twirling you around the kitchen. You both fell to the floor next to each other and laughing, just trying to catch your breath. After your laughter died down a little, you rolled over to face him, and he did the same while propping his head up with his hand. What are you doing home so early? I thought you'd be out for a few more hours. You asked with a small grin, just happy he was here with you. I just wanted to have dinner together night. It's not the same eating without you anymore. He replied, softly blushing. You blushed a little as Inko's words from earlier popped into your mind. You're special to him. I'm glad you did. You gave a slight pause before speaking again. I missed you today, Izuku. Your voice was barely above a whisper. His eyes softened, holding your gaze. It looked like he was in deep thought before he spoke. I missed you too, 𝑦/N, he whispered, rubbing his thumb down your cheek slowly. His touch made your stomach do backflips. Your eyes widened for a moment as he slowly leaned down closer to you. Holy sh*, is he about to kiss me? Plus your heart thumped hard in your chest as his face inched closer to yours. Feeling his breath dance across your lips was pure bliss. You began leaning towards him, about to meet his lips. Just as my lips were about to touch hers, there was a loud thumping coming from the front door. I mentally released a string of curses as I pulled away, then helped her to her feet, then made my way to the door to see who interrupted us, and, much to my surprise, it was 𝐒𝐭𝐴𝐴. He never comes to just visit. What is going on? You done moron. I've called you 10 times already. What the hell have you been doing? He yelled while pushing past me to enter the house. 𝑦/N was standing in the kitchen, completely shocked at his sudden appearance, and her face turned bright red as she turned her gaze to her bare legs, then back to his face. She bolted down the hallway to her room to get dressed. I had completely forgot that she was only in her underwear and a big shirt. I scratched the back of my head in embarrassment and pulled my phone out to see that I did in fact have several missed calls from him. He turned to look at me with a smirk on his face and crossed his arms, then slowly started tapping his foot against the floor.
Wow.
I can see why you let her live with you. Didn't really take you for the type to dash. I cut him off before he could finish speaking. I knew where he was going with this conversation, and I didn't really want to deal with it at the moment. Anyway, what's going on? I asked blankly while rubbing my hand down my face in frustration. We're going to bust that drag dealer we've been tracking for months now, but you know that if you would have just answered your DMN phone, nerd. He spit angrily while rolling his eyes. Whatever, I'll be ready in a minute. I waved him off, then made my way down the hall to 𝑦/N's room. I knocked and waited for her to answer. She opened the door, now filled dressed with an awkward smile. I have to leave again. I'm sorry about dinner, but I promise I'll make it up to you. I'm not really sure when I'll be back though, I said, looking down at my hands that nervously rubbed each other. It's okay, I understand. Just please be careful, Izu. She relaxed a little as she spoke. That was the first time I had ever heard her use that nickname, and I loved it. I could feel my chest tighten as I looked at her. I like that name. I cupped her cheek with my hand and smiled warmly at her. You should call me that more often. I will. Promise. She leaned into my hand, placing her fingertips to my hand on her face. Do you think we could talk later? I pulled my hand away from her. Sure. She simply nodded. Hurry up, dumbass. We gotta go. Bakugo yelled from the kitchen. Okay, well, bye. I smiled at her while she giggled at my hot-headed friend. Bye, Izu. I'll see you later. She waved to me. We made our way to Bakugo's hero agency, where some of our other hero friends were waiting. Even though I had an important mission going on, I couldn't help thinking about 𝑦/N. I'm just gonna come out and say that I like her, but if I do that, she may think that I let her stay with me to take advantage of her situation, even though I would never do that. Damn it. Maybe I should just keep it to myself now. Just tell her, idiot. Why is this so complicated? As I was spaced out during the meeting, a certain loud mouth brought me from my thoughts. Damn it, 𝐒𝐭𝐴𝐴. Are you even listening? This is important, so get your head in the game. He yelled while the others looked over at me, completely confused by my actions. I'm sorry. What were you saying? I chuckled nervously. After the meeting was over, we all went to the location we were given. Todoroki and I had been stationed together. We were supposed to rush the enemy from the front, while Bakugo and Kirishima were supposed to cover the back entrances. If only that plan had worked. 𝑦/N. SPOV, you were sitting on the couch watching a movie after finishing dinner, wondering what Izuku could possibly want to talk about later. Thump thump, you jumped at the sudden loud frantic banging coming from the front door. You glanced at the clock to see that it was around midnight. Who could be knocking so late? You stood and made your way to the door, When you opened it, your eyes widened upon seeing Inko at the door with a panicked look locked on her pale face. You could feel your heart rate increasing as you waited for her to speak. Still she didn't. She just looked at you, tears streaming. Please be alive. Inko, what's wrong? Are you okay? You asked, pulling her into the house. It's Izuku, he's been hurt badly. I've tried calling you, I didn't know what else to do. She covered her eyes with her hands as she tried to stifle her crying. Your breath hitched in your chest as you felt a tear roll down your cheek. You raced to your room to get dressed and grab your phone that was dead. You two rushed to the hospital that Izuku was taken to, and poor Inko felt her world was crashing down around her. The sound of your shoes hitting the floor seemed to echo through the surprisingly quiet hospital as you approached the front desk with Inko in tow behind you, still crying. I need to see Hero Deku. He was brought in last night. Your tone was rushed and a bit panicked. The woman behind that desk looked at you for a moment and gave an irritated sigh, which really got under your skin. And what is your relation to the patient? Her tone sounded like she didn't really care in the slightest. I'm his friend, you said lowly. I'm sorry, can't let you see him. Only family or spouses can see heroes while they are injured. He's not awake to give consent about you visiting.
By now.
She rolled her eyes. Listen here, you little bit dash. Your angry words were cut off by Inko, who could almost see the steam coming out of your ears. I'm his mother, and she can see him whenever she wants to. Her stern tone caught you off guard. So, where is my son? She smacked her hand down on the desk. The woman's eyes widened in shock as she immediately took down your information in case you ever wanted to come back to visit, and Inko wasn't there. Right on. You giggled, giving Inko a high five, which in turn made her smile just a little. The two of you made your way quickly to the room where Izuku was, and when you slowly pushed the door open, you felt your knees go weak as soon as you laid eyes on him. Inko, on the other hand, did sink to her knees, unable to breathe at the sight in front of her. You dropped down to Inko's level and started rubbing her back to console her cries. Your gaze fell back to Izuku, who laid on the bed hooked up to different machines. The one thing that stood out the most was the large wound on the side of his chest and the one on his stomach. His side was black from bruising, like how yours had looked after Kazuki kicked you around. I know it looks bad, but let's just wait for the doctor to explain everything. He's going to be just fine. You stood and pulled her over to an open chair. Finally, after what felt like hours, the doctor came through the door with a clipboard in his hands, along with a nurse. Hello, I'm Dr. Nara. He slightly smiled to us. You and Inko jumped up and walked over to the man in the white coat. Is he going to be okay? Inko asked while shifting her gaze from her son back to the doctor. He suffered a pretty severe chest injury and broke cerebral ribs, causing one to puncture his lung, so we had to insert a chest tube to drain blood and air from the space around his lungs. Not to mention the deep stab wound that damaged his kidney. The doctor said with a sigh. He continued to talk about the medical aspects of what was wrong with Izuku. You started to get an uneasy feeling in your gut because he never answered Inko's question. A tear ran down your cheek, then you quickly wiped it away. But is he going to be okay? You cut the doctor off and Inko turned to look at you, taking your hand in the process. What you didn't see was that Izuku had woken up with all the commotion going on. He looked over to see you standing there next to his mother. You consoled her when she needed it, and that made his heart melt seeing you taking care of her at a time like this. He'll be fine. We're just waiting on our healer to get here in the morning to fix him up. He should be good to go home by tomorrow evening, and he should be awake any time now, but he needs bed rest for another week or so. He smiled and turned to leave. You felt a weight lift from your chest, making it easier to breathe. You turned and hugged Inko tightly. He's gonna be okay, you said to her with a smile, trying to keep it together. You pulled away from her and told her that she should go home and rest. After a few minutes of debating, she reluctantly agreed. I'll be here all night. If anything happens, I'll give you a call. I'll see you in the morning, you said as she smiled. As soon as closed the door behind her, you dropped to your knees and cried your eyes out. You stopped immediately when you heard Izuku wince trying to sit up. Y/N, please don't cry. He spoke softly, looking over to you. In that moment, you felt your heart flutter. You jumped up and ran to him, wrapping your arms around his neck, careful not to hurt him. They put his hand on the back of your head and pulled you tight against him, while tears soaked his neck. I was so scared that you were going to die. You cried harder hearing those words dip from your lips. He pulled you away to look into your eyes, cupping your face with his hands. I'm not going anywhere, he whispered, then rubbed his thumb gently across your cheek. Your eyes flickered to his lips, then back to meet his eyes again. The next thing that happened surprised you. Your lips softly met into his for only a moment, then you pulled away. His eyes widened for a brief second, then softened. Your cheeks flushed pink from embarrassment as you looked at him, searching his face for a reaction. I don't know why I did that. I'm so sorry. You blurred out, covering your face with your hands. He wrapped his hands around your wrists and slowly pulled them away from your face. There was a look in his eyes that you rarely ever seen from him. Lust. His lips crashed you into yours. This time it was deep and passionate. Your own moving against his in perfect rhythm. Melting from his touch, you sank into his hold, and your delicate hands tangled in his hair as he smiled against your lips. You both pulled away to breathe, cheeks still hot, just trying to catch your breath. Unable to find the words to describe the overwhelming feeling you felt, you just laid down next to him while he wrapped you in his arms carefully. I'm really sorry I worried you so much. Y/N. He whispered into your ear, brushing your H/C hair away from your face. Everything feels so easy with him. I'm just glad you're okay. You spoke softly, gazing up at him. He sighed as he kissed the top of your head, then started to run his hand through your hair. Your stomach filled with butterflies at the way his fingers occasionally brushed against your skin. Silence took over for a while. Then your eyes trailing down his chest to the 2 fresh injuries on his body. One from being stabbed, and one from a chest tube. What happened? You asked calmly as your fingers traced his bandages. Then, he shuffled around a little to get comfortable before speaking. I was being careless. It was my fault I got hurt. We went to bust a drug dealer, but there was a woman there who looked scared, so I went to get her out of there, and she stabbed me. He ran his hand down his face. What about the broken ribs? You raised an eyebrow at him. I accidentally stepped in front of 𝐕 when he went to knock out one of the villains. Pretty pathetic of me. Huh. He gave a sad smile, then tried to laugh it off, turning his gaze away from you. He gripped his side from the pain of having broken ribs. Your face was laced with concern for him. You placed a hand on his cheek to turn his face towards yours. You aren't pathetic. Everyone has bad days, but I don't want you doubting yourself because you're a great hero. Your words getting softer as you spoke. You're my hero, Izuku. His eyes softened as he looked down at you. You always know how to make me feel better. Thank you for that. Y/N. He pulled you closer. You both drifted to sleep, content and happy that everything was all right. The following morning, Inko arrived at the hospital to find you and Izuku sleeping together in each other's arms. A wide grin spread across her face as she looked down at the 2 people she loved so dearly and simply took a seat on the opposite end of the room to wait. My eyes fluttered open softly, and I looked down to see Y/N in arms. A gentle smile gracing my lips as my gaze trailed over her appealing features. Then I gently kissed the top of her head as I looked down at her. I had never felt this way about anyone before. I wanted to make her smile and to keep her safe forever. Anytime she wasn't around, it just felt like a rock was sitting in my gut. Don't get me wrong. Ever since I became a pro hero, there's been plenty of women that threw themselves at me. I just could bring myself to fall for anyone because it just didn't feel right. The idea that they all just wanted to be with me because I was a pro was always on my mind, and that wasn't the kind of love I wanted. Good morning. Inko spoke up in a playful voice, letting me know she was there. My head snapped up towards the sudden sound and my face burned bright red as I scratched my cheek in embarrassment. Morning, Mom. How long have you been here? I asked, trying to avoid making eye contact with her. Not long. I thought it best that I not wake either of you just yet because you looked so comfortable. She lightly giggled at my red face. I hummed before speaking again, slightly tightening my grip around Y/N as if she was going to slip away at any moment. You're going to tease me forever about this, aren't you? I sighed, accepting my fate as my lips turned upward slightly. Not at all. She gave a warm smile before continuing. It makes me happy to see you smile like that, and it's all I have ever wanted for you. I don't think I've ever felt like this with anyone else. I think I love her, Mom, I said quietly as my eyes drifted to my mother, then down to Y/N's sleeping face. A peppy pink-haired nurse with a ponytail popped her head into the room with a smile. Interruption our conversation. The healer is on her way up to finish your treatment, Mr. Deku. You should be cleared to go home after. She chirped and disappeared from view before I could thank her. I glanced back towards my mother as she stood to leave, turned back to face me before getting to the door. I know you love her, sweetheart, and you should tell her how you feel, she said with a smile. Then the room fell silent for a moment before I spoke again. I don't know if I should just yet. Maybe she doesn't feel the same. I sighed dramatically and laid my head down on the bed to stare at the ceiling. You'll never know how she feels until you talk to her, son. I'll stop by your house when you get home.
Love you.
Inko waved to her son as she left the room. She kissed me back. Maybe I have a chance after all. I'll find the right time to tell her. My eyes darted back to the girl in my arms as she stirred around. Her appealing E/C eyes opened, looking straight up at me. Both of our faces dusted pink. It's strange that we had slept in the same bed almost every night, but this time felt different. How are you feeling? She pulled away from me to stand, and I instantly missed the feeling of her being so close. I'm fine. I guess the healer is on their way up, so we should be able to go home soon. I raised myself up, ignoring the pain. Mom just left a few minutes ago. She said she would come by later. I saw her face turn 3 shades brighter, almost like I could feel the heat radiating off of her from here, which made me lightly laugh at how flustered she looked. Your mom was just here. That means she saw the way her voice dropped, and she swallowed hard. Mother of all might, were we like that the entire time she was here? She ran her hands through her hair in frustration. I knew she was feeling embarrassed, but I couldn't help but laugh at her reaction. I thought it was so cute. Calm down, Y/N. It's fine. It's not like we were naked or anything. As soon as I said that, her eyes widened. I smiled back at her, but I noticed she had been staring off into space, biting her lip. As I went to open my mouth to ask her what she could possibly be thinking about, the same pink-haired nurse walked in with another woman in tow. She had curly brown hair that hung to her shoulders. However, I barely gave them a second look. I was still looking at Y/N, thinking about what was going on inside of her head. Good morning, Mr. Deku. How are you feeling? The woman asked cheerfully, looking down at the clipboard in her hands. I'm fine, just ready to get home, honestly, I replied after I turned my attention away from Y/N to the woman speaking. I'm not sure if Y/N noticed my staring, but her face was bright red, so maybe she did. The healer fixed me up, and we made our way back home. Neither of us ready spoke, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. When we walked through the front door, she started making dinner for us and forced me back to my room because the doctor said I should rest. My head hit the pillow as I laid back, thinking about how on earth I would tell her how I felt. After you and Izuku had came home, you told him that you would cook dinner, insisting that he rest up. Thinking about the kiss you two had shared was distracting to say the least, but you weren't the type to push conversations. Instead, you thought it best to let him bring it up. After all, you kissed him. What if it made things weird? Or what if he didn't feel the same? Either way, you couldn't shake the warm feeling inside of your chest that lingered every time you saw him. While you were plating up the food for you two, Izuku walked into the kitchen behind you. You turned to face him, and he had a worried look plastered across his face. Y/N, we need to talk. You looked up into his eyes. He placed his hand on your cheek in order to keep your eyes locked on his. Sure. Your voice was quiet, which only seemed to worry him more for just a moment. There is something I've been wanting to tell you for a while now, but I'm not sure how to say it though. His gaze darted from your eyes to your lips. Izuku, your words were cut off by his lips crashing into yours, passionately and slow. The more you let yourself push against the kiss deeper and deeper, the sloppier and heated it got. You ran your hands through his hair, pulling at the roots. A soft escaped your lips, and he stiffened before he wrapped his arms around your waist tightly, then let them slip down to the back of your thighs. He raised you up. You wrapped your legs around his waist to try to pull him closer to you. You both melted into each other, hungry for the taste of each other's lips. After a few minutes, he pulled away from the kiss. Both of you, 𝐸/N, he paused, looking over your face before finishing. I'm in love with you. Those words made your chest tighten, and you wanted more. I love you, too. You smiled against his lips. I want you forever. I couldn't imagine coming home without you here with me. I promise I will do right by you. I'll protect you and make you smile for as long as you let me. His thumb danced across your lips softly, still keeping his eyes locked on yours. You pushed your lips against his once again, enjoying this piece of intimacy you two shared. After a little while, there was a series of soft knocks at the front door. He pulled you down from the counter and set you back on your feet before making his way to the front door. Hey, Mom. I completely forgot that you were coming over. He laughed awkwardly and guided her to the kitchen table while you made her a plate.
Hi, Inko.
I didn't know you were supposed to stop by. You smiled brightly, heart still beating at an irregular pace from the heated makeout session that just took place. Hello, sweetheart. How is Izuku doing? Has he been resting? You know how stubborn he can be. The small green-haired woman stood next to you and began sitting the plates on the table. You know I'm standing right here? Izuku deadpanned, taking his seat at the kitchen table. Yes, dear, I know. 𝐸/N would be honest with me. You have a habit of saying you're fine even if you aren't. She smiled over her shoulder at her son. You tried to stifle your giggles by covering your mouth with your hand, but it didn't do much good. Izuku groaned in frustration, pouting like a child being scolded. Inko just kept her usual smile as she took a seat across from him. You sat next to Izuku. Every once in a while he would place a hand on your leg and rub circles with his thumb, making your face go red before he would lovingly glance over at you. Luckily, Inko didn't notice, or at least didn't let it show if she had. When dinner was finished, Inko left and the two of you started cleaning up together. Even though this man had told you that he loved you a few hours before, everything was normal. It felt easy to be near him, and you just couldn't get enough of that. The rest of the night was spent cuddling and watching movies until the two of you fell asleep on the couch. The next morning when you had woke up, you saw that he wasn't sleeping next to you anymore. He was walking out of the kitchen holding 2 cups of coffee. Good morning, appealing. He grinned, handing you a cup and took a seat. Morning. You smiled sleepily back to him, then took a sip of the hot drink. Whenever you feel like it, get dressed. I'm taking you out today. He patted the top of your head. Like on a date. You smirked up at him and leaned your head on his shoulder.
Yeah, a date.
If you want to be my girlfriend, that is. He looked confident, but his voice gave away just how nervous he was. It was adorable. I'd love to be your girlfriend, Izu. You wrapped your arms around his waist, and he pulled you into him with his signature blinding smile. After you both finished your coffee, you had decided to finally get up to get ready for the day. You couldn't contain your excitement, but also, you were nervous, which was something you weren't expecting to feel. Are you ready? He yelled from the other side of the house. You looked over your appearance one more time before going to meet him at the front door. I'm ready. I wasn't sure what I should wear, because I didn't know what we would be doing. You said as he turned to look at you. His jaw dropped at how appealing you looked. For a moment, he looked like a completely different person. His usual awkwardness faded, and his eyes flashed with confidence as he walked towards you, raising his hand to run his fingertips down your cheek. You look appealing, 𝐸/N. His tone was low and deep. You shuddered at his light touch, making your knees go a little weak. Thank you. You blushed, turning your gaze to the floor, and he leaned in, hooking his fingers under your chin to bring your eyes back up to meet his. We had better get going, or I'm not sure that we'll make it anywhere today. He whispered in your ear, then placed a soft kiss on your forehead. You couldn't form any words. You just nodded your head, and he opened the door for you to step out. The car ride into town was quiet. The radio was turned down low, but you could still hear it. Izuku kept a small smile on his face, and you couldn't help but let your heart melt. He took a left turn down a street you weren't familiar with, and that's when you saw it. People everywhere walking around between the different booths that sold food and small gifts. It was a festival of some kind. Your eyes lit up in amazement as you took in the surroundings. The pink petals from the trees blew in the wind, and you could see children playing games and laughing. It all looked like something from a movie, but here you were. Have you ever been to a cherry blossom festival? Y/N. He turned his attention to you, parking the car and removing the keys from the ignition.
No.
I haven't, but Izuku's is so appealing. Your face turned pink as he placed his hand over yours. I'm glad I get to be with you during your first one. He offered a half-lidded smile. Come on, let's get some food. He pulled his hand away and opened the car door, running quickly to the other side to open your door for you. He took your hand and helped you out of the car, closing the door behind him. You both began walking towards the colorful booths that lined the street, and you noticed that your hand was still in his. I'm glad you're here with me. You smiled up at him, tightened your grip on his hand. He slowly leaned down to place a kiss on top of your head. The festival was perfect and the food was amazing. The day was spent playing games and walking around just enjoying each other's company. Izuku had won a giant stuffed puppy for you at one of the booths. It was easily half your size. The day slowly started to turn into night, the sky turning appealing shades of pink that complemented the cherry blossom trees that were in full bloom. Izuku was leading you off into the distance away from the crowd of people when you turned your head. Your blood ran cold as you locked eyes with someone you hoped you would never see again.
Kazuki.
Izuku's here. You whispered up to him, stopping dead in your tracks. The sudden jolt from your stopping caused him to turn to face you. His green eyes widened upon seeing the terrified look on your face, wrapped his arms around you, and pulled you into his chest to calm you down. He scanned the crowd to see Kazuki staring in his direction with a devious smile carved on his face. He waved and turned around to leave, disappearing into the sea of people. Y/N, he's gone. Are you okay? He ran his fingers through your hair in an attempt to calm you down. You relaxed into him and allowed your nerves to settle before speaking. Yeah, I'm alright as long as you're here. I know I'll be okay. You wrapped your arms around his muscular frame tightly. We can go back home if you want. He leaned his chin against the top of your head. No, he's not taking anything else from me. I won't let him ruin our day. He pulled your head up by your chin to make eye contact with you. He looked down at you and nodded his head in determination, then took your hand to continue to lead you towards the place he had picked out to end the night. It was perfect. A row of cherry blossom trees lined the path near a pond. You smiled as he motioned for you to sit under one of the trees. You leaned your head on his shoulder, watching the pink sky turn dark as night fell. Why did you bring me out here? You questioned. He laughed and looked at his watch before giving you an answer. You'll see, just a few more minutes. He laid his head against yours and pulled you in closer. The next few minutes went by in comfortable silence, then a flash of bright colors lit up the sky. Your eyes shinned in awe at the perfect view above you. Fireworks. These are so appealing. You laughed and jolted forward in excitement. Yeah, you are. He hummed, not taking his eyes off of you. You couldn't hear him clearly because of the loud booms that ripped through the air, but he didn't mind because he said it more to himself than to you. You turned your head back to him, making direct eye contact. The way he was looking at you made your heartbeat quicken. He smiled softly and ran his fingers down your cheek. His eyes were filled with a loving glimmer. As soon as his fingers made contact with your skin, it felt like your heart stopped beating for a moment. I think I'm in love with him. He leaned towards you, cupping your warm cheek in his hand, and pressed his lips to yours. You couldn't get enough of this feeling, and you knew right then that he was the person you wanted to spend the rest of your life with. He made you feel safe and truly wanted like nothing bad could ever happen while he was standing next to you. You pulled away from his gentle kiss with glossy eyes, trying to keep the tears at bay. He instantly noticed and started to panic and pull away from you. Y/N, I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable or anything. Next time I'll ask before I kiss you. I promise. You couldn't help but giggle at how flustered he looked in the moment. You placed your hand on his shoulder to calm him down before you spoke. You don't ever have to ask to kiss me, because I want you to kiss me. You smiled up at him and placed a soft kiss on his cheek. You felt his shoulder relax under your touch, his bright grin returning. I want to kiss you too, he hummed, leaning back against the tree. The fireworks came to an end and you both decided to head back home for the night. You replayed the events in your head as you laid down next to your boyfriend to sleep. Everything felt like a dream come true, but then you remember that Kazuki had seen you with Izuku and you couldn't shake this feeling that this was far from over. You woke up in Izuku's arms. A warm smile spread across his face as he looked down at you. Yesterday's date went perfectly, and he assured you it was the first of many more to come. It was decided that both of you would go to Inko's house for dinner. You wanted to tell her that you and Izuku had started dating. Izuku sighed happily as he watched you get up to go start coffee, daydreaming about how much he wanted to be with you forever and the life you two would lead together. The sound of his phone ringing pulled him from his thoughts. Oddly enough, it was Shoto calling him. He furrowed his eyebrows and answered the phone. Todoroki? He questioned, shifting around to sit up. Hello, Midoriya. Some of our friends wanted to know if you wanted to hang out for a little while today since we haven't seen you much lately. He said casually. Sure, what did you guys have in mind? Izuku scratched his head and stood up to put on some fresh clothes. We were going to come by if that was all right. His monotone voice echoed through the phone. Yeah, I don't mind at all. There is someone I want you guys to meet anyway. He smiled, peeking his head into the kitchen to see you filling up 2 cups with coffee. Great, we'll be there in about an hour. He hung up, and Izuku walked into view to wrap his arms around you and kiss your cheek. You smiled and nuzzled your cheek into his chest. You picked up the 2 cups and handed one to him, taking a sip from your own cup. So I just got a call from one of my friends, and they're going to come over in a little bit. I'm excited for you to meet them, he said while both of you took a seat at the table. Do you think they will like me? You propped your head up in your hand. Izuku looked confused as he furrowed his eyebrows. Why wouldn't they? You're amazing, Y/N. He offered a warm smile that worked miracles for your anxiety. You paused for a moment, trying to think of the right way to voice your concerns. You sighed and glanced down to your steaming cup in front of you. Well, I'm not a hero. I'm just a bartender with no quirk. I'm just trying not to get my hopes up about making friends, because I've never had much luck with it. You looked back up at him to see he was concerned, but his eyes softened and he leaned over the table to kiss your lips. Baby, they're gonna like you. They are great people, and I think you'll really get along with them. For some reason, his kiss calmed you down instantly. You grinned and stood up from the table, telling him you were going to go shower. I could join you if you'd like, he called as you were halfway down the hallway. You stiffened and blushed, but you couldn't help but to think of Izuku wet and naked in the shower with you. You cleared your throat and tried to shake the embarrassment away before you spoke, which didn't work. You'd better hurry then. Your voice was trembling more than you thought it would. You could hear Izuku choking on his coffee from the next room, and you laughed. He's too adorable for his own good. He quickly stood up from the table and made his way into the hallway with his face as red as could be. He stopped in front of you and rubbed the back of his neck, his eyes bouncing between both of yours. I was kidding, but if you really want me to, then I'd love that. I just don't want you to think I was trying to rush anything, so if you change your mind, then I'll go. He waited for a response, but the only thing that he could hear was the sound of his own heart beating loudly in his ears. You slowly pulled your shirt over your head, dropping it to the floor, and his eyes widened. You were now standing in front of him in only your panties and BR, and he swallowed loudly as you grabbed his hand and pulled him into the bathroom. He gathered his nerves and walked toward the shower and turned the hot water on. Steam slowly started to fill the room as he removed his shirt and sweatpants, leaving himself only in his boxers. He closed the distance between you and cupped your cheek in his hand. Izu, I want you to shower with me. Your soft voice seemed to echo through the bathroom. He nodded his head and smiled with excitement. You leaned in to kiss him, running your fingers through his messy hair. As you pulled away, you turned to allow him to unhook your BR, letting it slide off your AMers into the floor. Then you hooked your thumbs in the sides of your panties and slid them off slowly and stepped into the warm water. Izuku removed his boxers and followed you into the shower, watching the water roll down your soft skin. You felt your breath hitch as he wrapped his strong arms around you from behind and pulled you closer to him. You're so appealing, baby. he whispered in your ear, moving your wet hair away from your neck with one hand while keeping the other firmly on your hip. It sent a shiver down your spine as he placed a soft kiss to your damp neck. At that moment, you melted into his touch and all of your nerves washed down the drain along with his. Izuku placed more sweet kisses along your neck and across your shoulder. He lightly bit at the skin on your neck, which caused a soft to escape your lips. He stiffened and gripped your hip tighter, slowly gliding his other hand down your body until it rests on the opposite hip. His breathing grew heavier, as did yours. His hand moved up your stomach and cupped your breast, squeezing it gently. "Just say something and I'll stop," he whispered, his warm breath fanned over your cheek. You nodded your head and leaned back into his chest, feeling how hard he was. "I need you to tell me that you want me, please," he growled with pleasure, pulling your body closer to his. "Izuku, I want you. I want you so badly that I can't stand it." "You out," he smirked and turned you around to face him. With one hand, he pinned both of your wrists against the shower wall above your head and began kissing, and the skin on your jaw. He slowly moved down your neck to your chest with his lips. With his other hand, he slides his fingertips down your chest between your melons. The sensation felt like a jolt of electricity shooting through your body. You leaned your head back, allowing him better access to your neck as you whimper with pleasure. Upon hearing the sweet sound he longed for, he pushed his knee between your thighs to spread your legs. USCK in a deep breath as he pushed against your core. You had never felt this intensity before, and it really showed on your face. Izuku ran his tongue across your lips roughly and let out a low growl that sends a shiver down your spine. This more diamante side of Izuku is so hot. And look at me. He growled out and rubbed your core with his fingers, working against your CLT. Your eyes met his green, lustful ones, and you couldn't help but loudly against Hip's lips. It seemed like something snapped inside of him at that very moment, and he couldn't hold himself back anymore. He slipped 2 fingers inside of you, and your core tightened around his fingers. You let out a needy whine as he started pumping them inside of you slowly, while keeping your gazes locked. "Please don't stop," you breathed, letting your head finally fall back against the wall of the shower. "I've wanted you so badly ever since the first night we met," he said, leaning in to lick your neck. You could feel your body pulsing with pleasure at his touch. With his other hand, he picks up one of your legs and knees down to kiss your aching core. He dragged his tongue across your CLT, and your knees started to go weak, and you felt your core tighten. You knew it was only a matter of time before you came undone. "This feels so good, I want more. I need more, please." You cry, grinding against his fingers. Izuku stood while keeping your leg raised but dropped your wrist and they fell around his neck, pulling him closer. He ran his fingertips down your neck to your stomach. "Are you sure this is what you want?" "That I'm what you want." His voice softened for a moment as he pulled back to look into your half-lidded eyes that were clouded with pure pleasure. "Yes, you are what I want." As soon as he saw the small smile pull up on your lips, he rubbed his PP against your CLT, making your body jolt with want. He slowly pushed himself inside of you to give you time to adjust to his size, letting out a low of his own that drive you crazy. Then he started pumping in and out of you at a steady pace. You breathed out. "That's it, baby, you feel so good," he said in your ear, his warm breath fanning over your neck. Your body vibrated with pleasure as you could feel yourself coming closer to your CL-mex with each move. You tugged at his hair, and he gripped your thigh tightly in an attempt to keep you still. Both of you echoed through the room, and you couldn't help yourself anymore as you gave in to him. You came, and he grabbed your jaw to study the face you made. That was the last straw for him. He slammed his lips into yours as you rode out your CL-mex, both of your tongues fighting for dents. You bit his bottom lip on it. "Are you, Izuku questioned, finding it hard to get out the words he was looking for. "I'm on the pill," you said between little whimpers. Izuku came and then laid his head against your shoulder, leaving soft and gentle kisses. You smiled brightly, and you wrapped him in a tight hug. "I love you," you said, placing a soft kiss on his lips. "I love you too, baby." He smiled back at you and pressed his forehead against yours. You both finished up your showers and got dressed. A knock at the door startled Izuku, making his face turn bright red as he rushed to answer the door. I forgot my friends were coming over. He pulled the door open to greet them and was faced with Todoroki, Bakugo, Kirishima, Kaminari, and Mina. Hey guys. I completely forgot you were coming over. He chuckled and ran his hand through his still wet hair. Plus they exchanged greetings, except Bakugo that just grunted angrily and made their way into the living room together. Midoriya, we came over to talk to you about something. Shoto's voice sounded serious. Izuku looked around the room at his friends. He noticed that Shoto was the only one looking at him. The others were looking around the room or at each other. Their looks gave them away from that they didn't come over to just hang out, and Izuku dreaded what Shoto said next. I shifted my weight uncomfortably between my feet, waiting for one of my friends to speak up. I crossed my arms over my chest as Shoto spoke up first. Midoriya, we came over to talk to you about what happened on that last mission. We're all worried because it isn't like you to be distracted at work, he said, looking over to Bakugo that stood next to him. Sorry guys, I guess I just had a lot on my mind. I laughed awkwardly and scratched my cheek. Yeah, loser. You really lost your SHD over some girl that probably doesn't even love you. Pathetic. Bakugo scoffed while rolling his eyes. You were distracted and you're lucky you didn't get yourself or anyone else killed. Wow man, no need to be so harsh. Accidents happen, Kirishima commented. Well, he is supposed to be the best and he's not right now. Bakugo yelled. I don't need you guys to worry so much. I know what I'm doing, and this is what I want. I scoffed. Luckily, Y/N was still getting dressed in her room because I really didn't want her to hear any of this. It would be embarrassing for her to know that I was getting ripped a new one by my friends over what happened at work. I know you like this girl, but you need to pull your head out of your butt. She's probably just using you anyway. Bakugo growled, irritated that he was even there in the first place. Stop saying that. I was aware of what I was getting into from the start. My expression turned serious as I looked over them. I just don't like that you are letting your hero work slip, especially after you've worked so hard to be number one. We're all just concerned for you. You don't know this girl, and we don't either. Shoto said while running his hand through his dual-colored hair. Well, I do know her. You guys haven't even tried to get to know her at all. I stated, becoming frustrated with the conversation. Do you? Bakugo scoffed, taking a step forward. How much do you know about her? From what I see, she's just some quirkless woman who has shitty taste in men that's looking for someone to save her butt. I know enough. She isn't just using me. She's not that kind of person, so don't say that about her. I spat, balling my fists at my side in anger. Mina and Kirishima were having their own conversation, but I couldn't make out what they were talking about. At this point, I was grateful that they didn't have anything negative to say about the situation. That was until Mina spoke up. Didn't she try to kill herself when you found her? I mean, maybe you should have just checked her into the mental hospital and let them do their job. This just seems like it's a lot to handle on your own, she said, looking up at me from her spot on the couch. I could tell that she didn't mean anything by that, only that she was worried. You should really get your priorities straight, Deku. You haven't been working much lately, and I would assume it has something to do with that girl you took in out of pity. Bakugo yelled as he stormed off towards the door. I know I've been a little out of it lately, but I'm fine. You guys don't have to worry about me so much. I yelled back to him, then he slammed it shut behind him. The others started walking towards the door to leave as well, waving goodbye as they walked out the door. Shoto stopped before heading out and put a hand on my shoulder. There isn't anything wrong with falling for someone, but you should put work first. Also, you should give yourself time to really get to know her before you start shrugging off your responsibilities. He spoke before leaving. I ran my hand down my face in frustration. I huffed and walked back towards the living room. That's when I saw her standing there with tears in her eyes, and it made my heart hurt seeing her upset. So, is it true? She whispered out. I an eyebrow at her in confusion and took a few steps forward, stopping directly in front of her. What do you mean? I went to pull her closer to me, but she took a step back. That feeling of her not wanting me to touch her hit me like a brick, and it hurt. That all of this is out of pity, isn't it? You told all of your friends that I was the crazy girl who tried to kill herself, didn't you? I felt my heart P&D in my chest as more tears spilled down her cheeks. No, it isn't. I thought you knew that I cared about you from the start. And I just told them what happened because I insisted that you stay with me. I crossed my arms over my chest, hurt that she would believe that after everything. But you didn't say it wasn't. I heard you guys talking and you never told them that it wasn't out of pity. It was out of pity. That's why you wanted me to stay, so just tell me the truth. I could hear the pain in her voice as she wrapped herself in her arms. What I didn't know at the time was that Y/N was standing in the hallway listening to everything that was being said. I remember exactly what I had said, and I realized that I didn't make it clear to them at all that I was in love with her and that I wanted her in my life. I wasn't sure what to say at this point, so I said nothing. That spoke louder than words, I suppose, because she gave a sad smile. It was just a little overwhelming that my day could go from amazing to horrible so quickly. I shifted my gaze to the floor, avoiding eye contact because seeing her like that was killing me. I knew your friends wouldn't like me, and you could have gotten hurt because of me. She gripped the bottom of her shirt tightly as she continued to cry. Y/N, I promise it's not like that at all. I love you, and I want you here with me. I tried reasoning with her, but it wasn't doing any good. I think it would be best for both of us if I left, Izuku. You're the #1 hero, and your friend was right. You should put work first because it's your dream. She turned around quickly and ran to her room. She ran past me with her bag in hand, and as I called for her to wait, she just kept walking. The door closed behind her, and I cursed myself for not going after her right then. I thought that maybe she just needed some time to herself, but after a few hours passed and she didn't come back home, I started to worry. I called my mother in hopes that Y/N would have gone there, but she didn't. The only thing that crossed my mind was that dirty bag ex of hers. What if he found her? What if she's hurt? What if no? I paced around my kitchen, calling her over and over again, only to hear her voicemail repeat like a loop over the next few hours. I couldn't sleep that night. I had a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach that maybe she wasn't okay. You were taking a walk down the street after the little argument with Izuku. You knew that you overreacted a little because he was a good man and he would never lie to you about anything. Still, you couldn't help feeling a little hurt and confused. This kind of relationship was new to you, so you didn't exactly know what to expect or how to react. Running was the only thing you knew how to do in these types of situations, and that is exactly what you did. You ran away. You were more upset with yourself for running from him. You walked aimlessly around the streets and tried to think of what to do next. Maybe I should just go back and apologize, but what if he's still angry with me? Even if he is, I want to talk to him about this. You just kept walking, trying to think about what you would say to him when you got back home. Before you knew it, an hour had passed by, and you were pretty far away from the house.
Ugh.
Great. Now I'm lost. Can this day get any worse? You yelled up at the sky in frustration. You took a second to look around to see where you were, but nothing stood out to you at all. You hadn't been to this area of town before, so you decided to just call Izuku to ask him to come to pick you up. However, when you pulled out your phone, you noticed that it was dead. You mumbled a few curses under your breath as you turned and started walking back the way you came. It was dark now, and you started to feel uncomfortable, like someone was watching you. Every time you passed by an alleyway, you walked faster just to get to the next street lamp. That feeling wasn't new to you at all, but the more time you spent with Izuku, the feeling started to fade a little more and more. Now that you were alone, everything you had been scared of hit you like a bus. You started to panic a little, but soon gathered yourself and tried to find your way back home. You kept telling yourself that everything was going to be alright if you could just get back to your favorite person. You knew in the back of your head that Izuku was probably worried sick about you by now, and that made you feel pretty horrible, but what made you feel worse was the look on his face when you ran past him. He looked hurt, and knowing that you were the reason for that made you want to cry, so you decided that as soon as you got home you would make sure he knew how much you loved him. Finally, a familiar street. You grinned widely as your steps became more confident because home wasn't too far away now. You stuffed your hands in your pockets and walked forward, thinking of how lucky you got that you had taken all the right turns so far, but that lucky feeling quickly washed away when you felt someone wrap a hand around your mouth and pull you into a dim-lit alleyway. The smell was strangely sweet, but when you started feeling lightheaded, you knew what that sweet smell was.
Chloroform.
There you are. He laughed into your ear. Your chest felt heavy as you started to black out. Kazuki, you whispered in fear as you finally lost consciousness. This day, in fact, could get worse, and it was far from over. When you finally came to, you were strapped to a metal chair in an empty room. You couldn't tell where you were at, but you didn't like it one bit. Thrashing around and screaming for someone to help you wasn't getting you anywhere. You stopped as you heard footsteps approaching the door. You're awake. Wow, I really thought you'd be out longer than this. He grinned as he slid the rusty metal door open. The familiar voice echoed through the empty room. Your heart started so hard in your chest that you thought it was going to explode at any moment now. Why can't you just leave me alone, you sick F? You yelled in his direction as he slowly made his way towards you. Anger radiated from you as you started thrashing around again in an attempt to get away from him. He gripped your face tightly, forcing you to make eye contact with him. Has your little hero gotten tired of you already? He laughed. See, I told you that I was the only one that could love someone as pathetic as you. I'm not pathetic, you are. You smirked at him, venom lacing your words. If you're gonna kill me, just do it already, because I'm not scared of you anymore. You spit right in his face and laughed. I am scared, but I'll be if he gets what he wants after everything I've been through. He'll have to kill me before I go anywhere with him, ever again. He smacked you in the face hard. BLD spilled from your lip, and your ears began to ring. He used the sleeve of his coat to wipe your spit from his face, and then he moved slightly to the left, exposing a small table with a metal tray sitting on top of it, but you couldn't see what was in the tray. Someone grew some ball, huh? He laughed as he pulled the table closer, revealing what was in it.
Knives.
Lots of knives. Your eyes widened for only a moment, then you looked back up at him with a cold stare. He raised his hand, letting it rest on top of your head before speaking again. As much as I don't want to do this, I am going to kill you. But did you really think that I would let you die so quickly? I'm going to make you wish you never decided to leave me. Y/N. Somehow, you knew this was coming, but all you could think about was Izuku. You weren't thinking about him coming to your rescue because you knew that he had no way of knowing where you were. All you wanted more time with him. You wanted to kiss him again and to tell him how happy he made you. You wanted to tell him goodbye. I couldn't get rid of this horrible gut feeling that something bad happened to Y/N. I know she said that she was leaving, but she also said that she loved me, and that means she would come back, right? I wanted her to come back home so badly, and I knew she was pretty upset when she left, and in all honesty, I couldn't blame her for being mad at me. It's been a few hours and still no sign of her, so I did the only thing I could think of. I called some other heroes to help me out, but I didn't tell them what I needed help with just yet. Shoto, Kirishima, and Bakugo arrived at my house about 20 minutes after I called them. Now that we were all here, I could tell them the reason I had them rush over in the first place. My mind was running a million miles a minute, and I wasn't sure where to start as I stood in front of them. I need your help.
Please.
I said as I glanced around the group. With what exactly? Kirishima asked, scratching the side of his head in confusion. Y/N.
She's gone.
I stated blankly. What happened? Shoto asked, running his hand through his hair. She was pretty upset and took off, but she hasn't come back yet, and I'm really worried. I think that Kazuki may have found her again. I sighed loudly. And If Deku, you mean to tell me you had me rush over here 'cause your girl left you during a shitty fight? Bakugo seethed in irritation. Look, I have a bad feeling about this. So are you guys gonna help me or not? I'll go alone if I have to. I balled my fists tightly, my nails digging into my palm. You know you have to wait 48 hours before you can file a missing persons report. She might come back soon. Shoto said, placing a hand on my shoulder. I'm not waiting 48 hours. She could be dead by then for all we know. I dropped my head, looking at the floor. Guys, I understand where he's coming from. I trust his instincts. Kirishima looked over at me with a smile before continuing. I'll help however I can. Plus, it's super manly that he wants to save his girl. He raised his fist in the air, determined to help out. Thanks, you're a good friend, Kirishima. So what about you two? I turned my attention to the angry blonde and the dual-haired hero in front of me. I'll help as well, 𝐲𝐻𝗨 commented, dropping his hand back to his side. She better be in some trouble, or I'm gonna kick your butt for making me look for her for nothing, Bakugo grunted, crossing his arms over his chest. Thanks, guys. I sat down at the kitchen table, motioning for them to sit as well. What's the plan? Kirishima asked, sitting across from me. Well, every time I call her cell phone it goes straight to voicemail, so I would assume it's turned off or dead. When I took �Y/N to the festival we saw Kazuki, so I put a tracker in her phone right after that just in case anything like this ever happened. I looked around the table at my friends. This guy really is persistent, isn't he? 𝐲𝐻𝗨 sighed heavily. How long will it take to track her location? I started the tracking device about an hour ago, so it should be ready any time now, I replied. I just hope she's okay. This dude is really me off. What kind of creepy piece of SHD stalks someone like this? Bakugo growled, huffing in annoyance. I'll admit, this is a lot more serious than I thought, he trailed off in thought. Yeah, I'm gonna clobber him when I see him. Kirishima smacked his hardened fists together. He's so unmanly. Beep, my phone dinged, letting me know that I now had her location. I noticed that she was about 20 minutes away, so I was glad that I would be able to get to her rather quickly. I thought for a moment about what plan would have the best outcome before speaking. Okay, so here's the plan. 𝐲𝐻𝗨 and I will look around for a viable point of entry, while Kirishima and Kaken will check to see how many people are in the building. Then we will all meet up and surround him and �Y/N. I need you to back me up when we get in there, 𝐲𝐻𝗨. Kirishima will cover Kaken. You two are to take out any villains nearby while we handle rescue. I slammed my scarred hand on the table in determination while the others nodded, agreeing with the strategy. You also need to be prepared for the worst. I know as heroes, we've seen some horrible things, but this is different because it's someone you love. 𝐲𝐻𝗨 stated, standing up and heading towards the door. I nodded towards my dual-haired friend as the others followed behind him, mentally preparing myself for what could be. I just hoped that I wasn't too late to save her. I was scared, to be honest. Also, I'm sorry for what I said. We all are. We are your friends, so we were just trying to look out for you however we could, but I can see how much she means to you. 𝐲𝐻𝗨 added before heading outside to the
car.
Thanks for that. I smiled and we all headed for �Y/N's location. I just prayed that we weren't too late.
This is it, please be alright, baby.
I'm coming for you. Kazuki dropped his hand from the top of your head, running his fingertips gently over each knife that laid in the tray before you like he was having trouble deciding which one to use first. You know, you should really look at the bright side of this little situation we're in, babe, he said as he picked up a medium-sized blade, dragging the tip along the metal tray and letting the sound fill the room. And what would that be? You scoffed, and then he laughed loudly. You'll get to see your mommy and daddy soon enough, but I don't know how happy they will be to see you after you got them killed. He placed both hands on either side of the chair and inched closer to your face, pressing his forehead against yours. You don't know SHD about anything. You slammed your head against it as hard as you could, then he stumbled away from you. You smiled up at him. Pure rage spread across his face before he gathered his composure and came closer to you. He stabbed your right thigh with the blade in his hand and left it there. Your screams filled the room as he cackled insanely. The pain spread through your body as BLD dripped down the leg of the chair, pooling around your feet. Every time you moved, you felt the blade buried in your skin, and it was almost unbearable. I really like this new side of you that fights back. I guess after this I should go thank your little hero in person. He sighed heavily. I wonder how he's going to react when he finds your head on his doorstep. He put his fingers to his chin in thought as he smirked down at you. Leave him out of this, you piece of SHD, you screamed in anger, ignoring the pain as much as you could. What will you do about it if I don't? He dropped his smirk, his face turning serious as he picked up another knife and walked towards you. Oh, that's right. You can't do anything 'cause you'll be dead. I'll kill you before I let you hurt him. You growled lowly, keeping eye contact with him. Because I love him, and there isn't anything you could do to change that. I have to find a way out of this chair. How exactly do you think you're going to pull that off? You're weak and you don't stand a chance against me. It's so sad that your little adventure away makes you think you could do anything to stop me. He spat with irritation in his voice. I guess I'll just have to remind you then. He delivered a hard punch to your stomach, forcing you to cough up a little BLD. You heaved from the pain in your stomach and screamed when you felt that knife move around in your leg. Your vision dazed just a little as you tried to catch your breath, but it was hard to keep consciousness. Just as you were about to pass out, Kazuki dropped the knife back on the table, then picked up a bucket and poured the contents over your head. It was ice water. It was enough to snap you out of your daze, and you were wide awake again. Your body shivered from not only the cold, but the pain you felt from your injuries. Now, we don't want you to miss any of the fun. So, it's time to wake up. He dropped the bucket to the ground. The loud thud echoed through the now quiet room. F you. You breathed out, letting the water drip from your face. He takes your face in his hands, cupping your cheeks tightly as you struggle to pull away from his grip. He only grabs you tighter until it was painful. You need to remember that I'm in control here, not you or your little hero. He's not coming for you, no one is. He roughly releases your face. I know that, but I don't care anymore, you said with ragged breath. Just as he was about to pick up the knife again, his phone rang. He answered with annoyance in his voice, rolling his eyes as the person on the other line spoke. Jesus, can't you morons do anything without me? I'm busy here. He paused for a moment to listen, then hung up the phone as turned back to you. I'll be right back, but don't you worry, we're far from finished here. He picked up his black coat and closed the door behind him. You weren't sure what the other person was saying, but was glad they called when they did. You looked around frantically, trying to find a way out of here, but couldn't. Just when you were about to give up, an image of Izuku smiling flashed through your head. You looked down at the knife and tried to think of a plan, then an idea struck. Although it made you cringe, it was the only choice left. This might end up bleeding to death if I pull this out, but it's my only chance. If I can get it out, I can cut these ropes and I'll be free. You leaned down as far as you could and put the handle of the knife in your mouth because there was no other way to reach it. You bit down as hard as you could to muffle your screams and began pulling it out. It was pure hell, but after a few minutes you managed to get it out. With the bloody blade still gripped tightly in your mouth, you wasted no time in cutting the ropes around your wrists. You pulled yourself up from the chair, feeling a little lightheaded from the BLD loss when you heard a loud explosion coming from behind the door. It sounded far away, but you could tell that it was still in the area you were in. This kicked your adrenaline into overdrive. You picked up the knife and backed away from the door, pressing your back against the wall. When the explosion stopped, you inched cautiously towards the door. When you pulled the handle, it creaked open just enough for you to peek outside. That dumbass didn't even bother to lock the door. You grin, ignoring the warm liquid that continued to run from your open wound on your leg. The BLD left a trail behind you, but you were so exhausted and determined to get out of there, you didn't care. That was until you heard footsteps coming from the hallway that you just came from. Panic set in, and you limped to the door closest to you, and it turned out to be a storage closet. You sat there and prayed no one noticed the BLD trail you left, but as you rested, all the adrenaline drained from your body, and you passed out on the floor of the storage closet with the knife clutched in your hand. Izuku, I'm sorry, but I don't think I'm going to make it home. We arrived at the warehouse that Y/N was being held in as quickly as we could. It was almost too quiet as we looked around. I grit my teeth, preparing to run in after her without a second thought until there was a hand on my chest holding me back. Shoto, I know you want to save her as soon as possible, but we need to get a better handle on the situation. If there are more of his men in there, he could kill her before we make it that far. He whispered to me with an apologetic expression. As much as I hated it, he was right. I wanted her to come back home alive, so we had to do this right. I nodded, and we made our way around the back to look for a way in. Kirishima and Bakugo went the opposite direction to check to see how many people were in the building. When we found a way in, I texted the other two, and they came to meet us around the back, and they said that there weren't many people inside. I gave the signal, and we went in. Shoto and I ran straight to where I thought she could be. Kirishima and Bakugo were taking down the guys in front of us, so I didn't have to stop. There was a big steel door at the end of the hallway, and I assumed that this is where she was because of the guards stationed around the area. I slid The door opened all the way, but when I looked around the room, my stomach turned at what I saw. BLD was everywhere around a metal chair that sat in the center of the room, and different-sized blades were laid out on a tray. Where the hell is she? This was where she was supposed to be. I grabbed at my hair in panic, pulling at the roots. The worst came flooding into my mind like a diamond breaking, and it felt like my chest was about to explode. Midoriya, don't panic yet. We have to look around a little more first. I'm sure she's fine, Shoto said, looking around the room as well. Bakugo and Kirishima came up from behind us, and our red-headed friend gasped in shock. Bakugo quickly slapped him in the back of the head, and he scoffed. That's a lot of BLD, Bakugo mumbled, walking further into the room to investigate. The arm restraints are cut, so she may have escaped. Hell yeah, that's so manly. Kirishima smacked his fists together with an excited grin. Kirishima, could you not call my girlfriend manly? I grunted, running my hand down my face. He laughed awkwardly and agreed that he should try harder to be more considerate. He looked down at his feet and noticed a red trail under his shoes. He snapped his head up quickly and ran down the hall without a word. The others exchanged confused looks and chased after him, unsure of what he was doing. Wait up, shitty hair. Bakugo growled loudly, picking up as much speed as possible. He crashed hard into Kirishima's back when he stopped, standing in front of a door. As he went to yell at his friend, his voice was caught in his throat when the door was opened. There was the girl they had been searching for, covered in BLD, laying on the ground completely still. Shoto and I come to a stop when we saw the look on their faces. I felt a spike of fear run through my body. Deku, you need to find that BSDRD before he gets away. I can take her to get treatment, but make sure you get him. Bakugo walked into the room and came back out carrying Y/N's body. I tried to choke back my sobs, but it wasn't working. I gripped my chest tightly with one hand, letting the tears run down my face. Shoto put a hand on my shoulder for support, but at this point, I didn't even notice. Is she alive? I managed to get out between my cries. I don't know. He turned his back to me in an attempt to hide her condition away from me. She's lost a lot of BLD, and she's getting cold, but she may still have a shot if I go now. I screamed in anger and sorrow, looking at the BLD dripping onto the floor from her limp body that was in Kaken's arms. You too, stay with him. Make sure he doesn't lose his SHD when he finds that son of a bitch. I'm going to take her to the hospital. He walked away from us all. Kirishima and Shoto tried to console me, but I pushed them away and started looking for Kazuki.
She's dead. She's dead. She's dead.
There's no way she could lose that much BLD and live. I'll kill him for this. My thoughts were eating away at me as I ran through the halls of the now empty warehouse. The two heroes struggling to keep up with me as I activated One for All, kicking down every door in my path while I searched for him. The last door I came to, the door flew to the back of the room as I kicked it off the hinges. There he was, standing right in front of me. All I could see was the red that stained the sleeves of his shirt. It was BLD. Her BLD, you're gonna pay for this. That was all I said before I dashed towards him at full speed, smashing my fist into his face before he had a chance to react. He stumbled backward and wiped the BLD from his nose. Kirishima and Shoto came in after that and grabbed my arms as I yelled at them to let me go. Stop. You're gonna kill him. This isn't what we do, man, we're heroes. Kirishima yelled. Kazuki looked around frantically in an attempt to escape, but there was no way I was going to let that happen. I broke free of their grips and kicked him in the chest. He gasped for air as he fell to the ground. I continued punching him in the face until he went limp and his BLD dripped from my fists. I didn't care if I was a hero. I didn't care if I killed him. I didn't care about anything but her in this moment. Suddenly, being a hero wasn't the most important thing to me anymore. It was her. My two friends finally managed to pull me away from him long enough to check him for a pulse. It was faint, but it was there. They kept me away from him until the police arrived and took him away. I raced to the hospital as fast as I could in hopes that maybe she was still alive. The other two stayed behind to assist with arrests and fill out the reports of what happened. Plus, please be alive, baby. Please, the ride to the hospital was quiet. I wasn't able to get a hold of 𝐭𝐿 about �Y/NS condition, so that only added fuel to the fire. I wanted to see her so desperately, but as soon as I arrive, my feet stopped moving before I could enter the building. Is she still alive? If she is alive, does she hate me for not being there? Does she even want to see me? The thoughts bounced around my head, but I wasn't sure of what I should do. All these insecurities were eating away at my heart, but I had to see her for myself to know that she was going to be okay. I pushed all the negative thoughts to the back of my head and went inside. Before I reached the front desk, I saw 𝐭𝐿 tapping his foot angrily near the elevator doors. "Why the hell haven't you picked up the DMN phone?" I yelled at him, upset that he hadn't been keeping me updated. "Because they won't tell me anything," he growled back, an irk mark appearing on his forehead. "They just keep saying that they'll let me know something when she's stable, but I just think these don't know how to do their DMN jobs." He grit his teeth. So he's worried about her too. Really is a good friend in his own way. "Do you know where she is?" I asked. He shook his head and pointed me towards the front desk, telling me to ask someone there. I made my way to the receptionist, who looked bored until she realized who I was. "Is there anything I can help you with, Deku?" She smiled widely at me. "Where is Y/N, L/N?" Ground Zero brought her in. The woman looked through some files on her computer. "Sorry, we don't have any updates on her condition yet. I'm sure the doctors will let you know something soon." She was still looking through her computer. "I need to see her. I need to talk to the doctor who's in charge right now," I said sternly, hands gripping the desk hard enough to turn my bruised knuckles white. The girl tried to argue with me about policies, but eventually gave me the information I needed. I ran to the elevators, telling 𝐭𝐿 that I would let him know how she was doing later. When I entered her room, tears started dripping down my cheeks. Her body looked so broken that it made me feel like I was about to throw up. "At least she's alive." I took a seat next to her bed, and the doctor walked in. He flipped through a clipboard in his hands. I assumed it was her chart. "Hello there, are you a friend of hers?" the man in the white coat asked. "I'm her boyfriend. Will she be all right?" I spoke nervously, glancing between the doctor and Y/N's unconscious form. "If I'm being honest, I'm surprised she's still alive with the amount of BLD she's lost. She's definitely a fighter. As of right now, all we can do is wait to see if she will wake up," he said, looking over the machines that were monitoring her condition. "So, there's a chance she won't wake up." I looked down to the floor, placing her hand in mine. "It's a strong possibility, yes. She's too exhausted to have recovery treatment right now, but if she can survive the next 24 hours, then we should be able to fix her up with a healing quirk." He sighed as he put a hand on my shoulder. "We just wait then. There isn't anything else we can do." I mumbled to him, squeezing her hand tightly in mine. "I'm sorry, but this is all we can do for her now. Try not to get too discouraged because, like I said, this girl is a fighter." He smiled at me and walked out of the room. As I sat there, silence filled the room. All I could hear was the steady beeping of the monitors in the room. I started to panic just thinking of the possibility of her not waking up. I'd never get to see her smile again, or hear her laugh. I couldn't help but cry as I moved her hair from her face. If she doesn't wake up, then I'll never get the chance to talk to her again. Y/N, please have to wake up. I love you so much, and I can't do this without you. I am so sorry that I didn't get there in time to save you. I'm sorry I broke my promise about not letting anyone ever hurt you. You don't have to forgive me, baby, but please just wake up." I laid my head against our intertwined hands and cried for what felt like hours, wishing and praying that all of this was just a nightmare and that I'd wake up next to her to sleeping peacefully in my bed. I eventually drifted off to sleep, holding her hand tightly. Unfortunately, when I woke up a few hours later, she was still asleep. That sinking feeling set in, making everything seem numb. All I could think about was that day I found her on the bathroom floor. I didn't want to lose her. I couldn't. She made me want to do things differently. She opened my eyes to what life could look like with her by my side, and I couldn't imagine anything else now. I'd eventually retire from being a hero, pass on my legacy to the next generation, marry the girl of my dreams, and have kids of my own someday. I saw it all with her, But now there was a possibility that all of those dreams and plans were disappearing into thin air. As your eyes fluttered open, bright light filled your vision, causing your head to P&D. You weren't really sure what had happened or where you were, but all you did know was everything hurt. From what you could gather in your weak state was that you were in a hospital room. You tried to sit up, but found that it was pointless as a hand pushed you back down gently. You looked in the direction of the person who was beside you. It was the same nurse with pink hair that had been here with Izuku when he was injured. Izuku. You shot up despite the pain in your stomach and leg, frantically searching the room for your green-haired boyfriend. Suddenly, the memories of everything that had happened came flooding back into your mind, the last thing being that you passed out in some storage closet expecting to not wake up again. Whoa, you should really take it easy. You almost died, but you're going to be okay, the nurse said as she attempted to calm you down. Your voice was hoarse as you tried to force yourself to speak. He isn't here, hey, didn't come, where is he? I whispered out, looking up at her as tears started rolling down your cheeks. She smiles as the door slides open. Izuku was standing there wide-eyed with his mouth hanging open, as if he had seen a ghost. Which, to him, that's exactly what he was seeing, because he thought you were never going to wake up. The bag of food that was in his hand dropped to the floor as tears started welling up in his green eyes. He gripped his chest tightly as he slowly walked towards you. Y/N, please say something, tell me this isn't a dream, he sobbed, dropping to his knees next to your hospital bed. I'm here, Izu. You whisper out, your voice still hoarse. This isn't a dream. You smile as you cry, extending your shaky hand to him. I was afraid that you didn't come. He grabbed your hand tightly and pressed it against his face. He took a minute to calm himself down. The nurse walked out to let the doctor know that you had finally woke up. Izuku hadn't left your side for 20 hours, but his mother convinced him to at least eat, so you wouldn't worry too much when you woke up. She kept telling him over and over again that you would wake up, but he was just broken. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. He tried to catch his breath. I wasn't here when you woke up, and I wasn't there when you needed me. None of this would have happened if I would have just stopped you from walking out that door. I couldn't keep my promise, Izuku. I'm the one who should apologize because I just ran out on you. You cupped his cheek with your hand, turning his face to look up at you. I love you so much. I was just scared that you would get hurt again because of me. That was why I left. I wasn't mad at your friends because they were just trying to look out for you. It was my fault I got hurt, not yours. I swear to you that I'll be more careful from now. Oni just can't lose you, not again. And I told them how much I love you. They wanted to stop by to see you when you were feeling better and apologize if that's okay with you. His eyes were puffy and red from crying, and he had dark bags under his eyes. You nodded your head and pulled him close to you, kissing him softly, and his hand rested on the back of your head to deepen the kiss. It was passionate and loving, something you never wanted to miss out on again. The door slid open and the doctor walked in, along with another woman. She began to heal your serious injuries and instructed that you stay in the hospital for a few days to make sure everything was healing correctly. You were so exhausted from the healing that you fell back to sleep shortly after. Izuku called Inko and Bakugo to tell them that you had woke up. Then he crawled into bed with you and held you close as you rested. Plus his fingers ran through your hair as he cried, thanking the universe that you were still here with him. Baby, I love you so much. He kissed the top of your head gently and pulled you closer to him, as if you would float away if he let go. Before you were released from the hospital, Inko had come to visit quite a few times, and of course, she smothered you with affection and homemade meals. You would never get tired of the warmth she carried with her whenever she was around. You also had some of Izuku's friends come to see you as well. Mina, Denki, Shoto, and Kirishima entered the room with balloons and stuffed animals while Bakugo leaned against the door and grumbled to himself, which made you laugh because Izuku had told you how worried he was about you while you were unconscious. You thanked them for coming to save you, and then they left not long after apologizing for what had happened. You and Izuku made your way home after you were discharged. Most of your injuries were healed, so you felt better, but even so, your green-haired boyfriend wouldn't allow you to do anything other than rest. Izuku. I'm fine really, you don't need to baby me so much. I know you're tired too. The nurse said you've barely slept the entire time I was there. You protested as he carried you to his room to lay you down in his bed. "Just let me take care of you, baby, please." He cooed in your ear, then placed a soft kiss on your forehead. "You've been through a lot, so you deserve to rest. I also just love to spoil you." He shrugged his shoulders with a small smile. Your heart fluttered in your chest as you looked into his eyes. Everything with Kazuki was finally over. He was in prison, and it was starting to hit you that you could start living your life without fear. You smiled widely as you pulled Izuku into bed with you. Tears pricked the corners of your eyes as he wrapped his arms around you and pressed gentle kisses all over your face. "Thank you for everything. This still doesn't feel really thought I'd never see you again." You hugged him tightly, nuzzling your cheek against his chest. "You don't have to thank me for anything, sweetheart. I'll always be here. I love you more than anything, and I'd do anything for you." He laughed softly and ran his fingers through your hair. "I love you too." You grabbed his face and kissed him roughly, missing the way his lips felt against yours. He ran his hand down your back to your waist, and he pulled you closer to him, never breaking the kiss. He grinned widely as you giggled against his lips. You finally felt as if you were home. "I'm going to go start dinner, my love. You stay here and rest. I'll come to get you when it's ready." He walked to the kitchen and started to cook your favorite meal. You waited a few minutes and creeped out of the room. You snuck up behind his and wrapped your arms around him tightly, your chest pressed tight against his back. If you had been able to see his face, then you would have noticed how red his face was from the little act of affection. He couldn't help but smile. It was the first time in a very long time that he was truly happy, and it was all because of you. He spun around quickly and cupped your face in his hands, kissing you softly. His eyes looked so full of love and happiness. "You're everything I've ever wanted, and I can't imagine my life without you, baby." He lowered himself to his knee and pulled out a little black box from his pocket. You felt like your heart had skipped a beat. Your hand flew up to cover your mouth and to choke back a sob. Tears ran down your face before you even realized you were crying. "I want you forever, and I knew that the second I met you. I know that I'm nowhere near perfect, and I have a long way to go before I get there, but for you, I will be the man you deserve, because you make me want to be the best I can be. So, will you make me the happiest man on earth and marry me? Y/N, L/N. His face was bright red, and he looked like he was holding his breath. You couldn't help but smile and throw your arms around him. Both of you fell to the floor laughing. The ring flew out of his hand and landed under the kitchen table, but you didn't care one bit. All you wanted was for him to know how much you loved him. "Yes. Holy SHD, we're getting married. I can't wait to call your mom and tell her." You laughed and kissed him roughly. His lips melted into yours, and it felt like the world had come to a stop. Nothing mattered but the two of you at that very moment. Everything was perfect. "We can invite her over for dinner tomorrow to tell her if you would like," he said. "That sounds perfect. But when did you decide you wanted to marry me?" You asked as you ran your fingers through his hair. "The day that I came home to you singing and dancing in the kitchen. I went out the next day and bought the ring. I just kept waiting for the right time to ask you because I wanted everything to be perfect, but then I realized that every second I spend with you is perfect, and I couldn't wait another second." He smiled and kissed your forehead. You both stood up from the floor and found the ring to put on your finger. You looked at this appealing emerald and diamond ring that sat on your finger like it had always been there and smiled. It was finally happening, your very own happily ever after with the man you loved more than anything on the planet.